Chapter 1714, Alive or Dead, 3, Roar. The monster climbed out from the depths of the ice below them. It was huge and stood tens of meters tall. Sang Feiyu and the rest who had already flown into the sky realized that they were only flying at the height of its enormous neck. It opened its massive mouth, a large, gaping maw of rotting black. A red tongue darted out and whipped away Wu Xiao, who happened to be the closest. Wu Xiao's expression changed as he quickly lifted his hand. A beam of spirit energy flashed towards the monster's tongue. But as though it was striking a vast ocean, the spirit energy did nothing to the monster. He was quickly trapped by the tongue. The rest of them acted quickly, throwing spirit energy at the monster's tongue as well. But even the strength of the 9 of them combined had no effect at all on the monster's tongue. In an instant, Wu Xiao was swallowed into the monster's mouth. Before they could even attack the monster with a second wave of spirit energy, Wu Xiao's body appeared on the head of the monster. "Save me. I'm begging you, save me. I don't want to die." Embedded on the monster's body, Wu Xiao looked up at them in fear. His eyes were filled in fear, his body covered in a layer of gleaming ice. His mouth gaped open as he begged them repeatedly. "Fuck." All of them were utterly stunned by the scene in front of them. It was at this moment they realized that the corpses on the monster were all people it had swallowed. They had never vanished but had instead become part of the monster's body. The most terrifying part was that their consciousness had not disappeared. They could still see and hear, could still speak and scream, but were imprisoned in the monster's body forever. The timid Xiao Ci gagged. Someone who had just been by their side was now part of the monster. The rest of them were still in shock when the monster attacked anew. They were unable to deal with this monster for even a second. They felt as though they were just running around like crazy people. How were they supposed to deal with a monster like this? All these supreme masters before them had died. How could they possibly be a match for it? Yi Qingtang clutched at the little white tiger as she flew as fast as possible with Jiang Shaobai hot on her heels. At this moment, the scales on the monster flew out like blades in all directions, raining down on the intruders. "Elder Sister Qing, watch out." Jiang Shaobai looked at the scales flying at them as his expression changed and he quickly raised his hands. A bright light emanated from his hands. The moment it touched the scales, there was a huge explosion and a powerful wave ripped the skies open with a resounding sound that split their eardrums. Yi Qingtang wanted to help Jiang Shaobai but the aftershock swept her away. But as she was pushed away, Yi Qingtang saw the fragments of the exploded scales turn into ice as they wrapped around Jiang Shaobai's body, encasing him in ice. At that moment, Yi Qingtang raised her hands angrily and sent out a black flame towards Jiang Shaobai's frozen body. The ice melted completely under the black flame. A wave of relief rushed through Jiang Shaobai and he smiled slightly. Chapter 1715, The Undead, 1. But before Jiang Shaobai and Yi Qingtang could react, a huge roaring sound pierced their eardrums. Countless ice spikes suddenly emerged from the icy ground beneath their feet. Powerful winds blew past them and dense snowflakes filled the sky. It was like the whole earth had suddenly been swallowed up. Yi Qingtang could not see anything at all. She just felt an immense aura charging toward her. A mere person was no match for the raging winds and Yi Qingtang lost all sense of direction as she was swept up by the fierce gusts. It was all she could do to steady herself and not plummet to the ground. If anything, it was like a major apocalypse had happened. Snow was everywhere and Yi Qingtang felt like the savage winds were trying to tear her apart. With this kind of snowstorm, those who were not at least a third heaven level and above would be torn to shreds. Yi Qingtang didn't know how long she had drifted within the snowstorm. As she was whipped and thrown around haphazardly, her clothes had completely frozen. If not for little white tiger continuously exuding warmth while in her arms, she would have already been frozen to death. After a long time, Yi Qingtang was finally carried off out of the storm's fierce embrace. The roaring wind died off and she turned to see a slate of pure white behind her. Frost and strong currents had taken over everything. The howling sound of the harsh, bitter wind sounded like a profound wailing from within. Damn, what kind of monster was that? Even I couldn't recognize it. Little White Tiger was still in Yi Qingtang's arms. It shook off the snow that had accumulated on its fur. Its scales were like ice and could penetrate the outside world. It looked like an ice sculpture. Not only that, it is completely undetectable when it doesn't move. Of course you can't recognize it. Yi Qingtang was panting as she tried to recompose herself. In these below-freezing temperatures, she was exerting a more than usual amount of energy. Little White Tiger twitched its ears and surveyed their surroundings. Engulfed by the violent storm, they had just thought about escaping earlier and had no idea where they were heading. They were now surrounded by ice and snow across a landscape full of canyons and gorges. I can hear something. Yi Qingtang's expression shifted. Were those footsteps? It sounded like footsteps treading across the snow and ice. She instinctively crouched down like a cat and scurried over to hide behind a mound of snow. Clack clack clack, the weird noises came closer and closer, and to Yi Qingtang, it sounded like bones being knocked against each other. Was that the roar of the Ice King? A curious voice suddenly rang out. I am afraid another foolhardy person has entered the mystic realm. He's so unlucky to have encountered the Ice King the moment he entered. I am afraid the Ice King is going to gain yet another notch on its belt, another voice answered. Yi Qingtang quietly peeked out from her hiding place as the voices approached. She saw two skeletons trudging across the snowy grounds, tilting their heads as if trying to listen to something. The Undead Clan. Yi Qingtang thought of the Undead Clan the moment she saw those skeletons. But on second thought, she detected something different. The Undead Clan radiated a thick aura of death, which was lacking from these two skeletons. Instead, they exuded a vibe that only living humans possessed. They were human. Before Yi Qingtang could ascertain if those two skeletons were part of the Undead Clan, the snowy mound in front of her started to move. Chapter 17:16, The Undead, 2, a giant white skeleton suddenly shook off the snow and stood up. It was nearly 3 meters tall. Yi Qingtang instinctively wanted to flee away. But before she could take more than a few steps, the giant skeleton reached out and grabbed her. Where did this little girl come from? The giant skeleton brought Yi Qingtang in for a closer look. Its pitch-black eyes were like two endless abysses staring right into Yi Qingtang. Reaching out, Yi Qingtang tried her best to force apart the fingers of the skeleton. But no matter how much strength she exerted, they remained stiff and unyielding. She attacked it with black flames, but the giant skeleton seemed completely unaffected. Roar! The giant skeleton suddenly gave an earth-shattering howl. A tremendously powerful force was suddenly barreling straight at Yi Qingtang. Paragon level. Yi Qingtang was shaken to the core by that powerful force. Panic filled her eyes as she gazed at this giant skeleton who could release a paragon-level force as and when it pleased. Old man, enough already. We have to get along with each other in future. Why are you scaring her now? One of the skeletons shook his head sagely as he watched the captive Yi Qingtang. It's been a long time since I have touched such soft flesh. Ah, so nostalgic. The giant skeleton seemed to like Yi Qingtang very much. He couldn't resist tightening his grip fondly. But to Yi Qingtang, that slight movement felt like she was being crushed to death. The two skeletons sighed when they saw the giant skeleton's doting manner. Come on, we have to head back now. You heard the roar of the Ice King just now. We can't be sure it won't come this way. You'll be swallowed whole if we encounter it. The giant skeleton shivered at their warning. It immediately hurried after those two skeletons, with Yi Qingtang still clutched firmly in its bony hand. Carried by the giant skeleton the entire way, Yi Qingtang was jolted in all directions and exposed to the harsh winds. She felt like she was about to fall apart. They soon arrived at the deep end of a canyon where a large group of skeletons gathered. The giant skeleton carried Yi Qingtang like a new toy. It had no intention of letting her go. Those other skeletons didn't express any surprise on seeing Yi Qingtang in his hand. Old man, put her down. She will be crushed to death within a day if you continue to hold her like that, one of the skeletons admonished him. She won't die here. Even if I crush her to a pulp, she will continue to live. The giant skeleton grumbled a bit, but in the end, he placed Yi Qingtang down on the ground. Regaining her freedom, Yi Qingtang cautiously surveyed the skeletons around her. You are all humans? Yi Qingtang hesitated a moment before asking. She could clearly feel that these skeletons possessed the vibe of living humans. Ha, this little girl is quite smart. We were once human, that's right. But in our current state, we are more like the undead now. One of the skeletons chuckled out loud. His jaw clattered so much that it looked like it was going to fall off any time. It was somewhat disturbing. You don't need to be so mystified. You will soon become like us. Treasure your skin and flesh as long as you can. What? Yi Qingtang was startled. Chapter 1717, The Undead, 3. You are so unlucky to have entered this mystic realm, you will never be able to leave again. You will forever be trapped here and suffer the slow passing of time, never growing old and never dying, until your flesh melts away and your blood runs dry. In the end you will be like us, turning into skeletons and remaining this way forever, living in this frosty landscape. One of the skeletons holding a heavy sword shook his head with a sigh. Yi Qingtang looked at that skeleton, but her gaze was suddenly attracted by the sword in his hand. The sword of destruction. Yi Qingtang was stunned by the sight of that sword. Wow Qinzhua, she actually recognized your sword of destruction. Another skeleton with an iron chain hanging around its neck chuckled. You are Qinzhua. The deity of the sword of destruction, Qinzhua. Yi Qingtang stared in amazement at the skeleton. Tens of thousands of years ago in the second domain, Qinzhua was the famous deity of the sword of destruction. Legend had it that with the sword of destruction in hand, he could even slash the sun and moon in half with just one move. Yi Qingtang had heard his legendary stories when she was traveling toward the second domain in her previous life. Qinzhua's sword of destruction was the target of countless powerful practitioners in the second domain. Qinzhua had personally slaughtered millions of enemies in fierce battles where the blood ran thick as rivers. His reputation as the deity of the sword of destruction had been forged since then. But tens of thousands of years ago, Qinzhua disappeared from the second domain with the sword of destruction. Yi Qingtang had only seen the sword of destruction in pictures. Holding the sword of destruction, Qinzhua stared at Yi Qingtang with his empty eye sockets. No one could tell what he was thinking. The deity of the sword of destruction. Ha, I haven't heard this name in such a long time. If you didn't mention it, we would have nearly forgotten he used to be called by that name. Another skeleton rubbed his bare chin thoughtfully. Yuan Di, are you that bored? Qinzhua snorted. Yuan Di. Yi Qingtang stared at the skeleton rubbing his chin. Her eyes were full of astonishment. You guys are the top fighters from the second domain? Yi Qingtang scanned the crowd of skeletons. There were quite a number of them bearing famous mythical weapons that belonged to the divine soldiers of the second domain. But those divine soldiers had disappeared from the second domain tens of thousands of years ago. Yuan Di said, top fighters from the second domain? Perhaps, once upon a time, but now we are just a bunch of skeletons. Why are you all trapped here? And how did you turn into this? Yi Qingtang was filled with curiosity. All these people possessed immense power and skills. How did they become skeletons trapped in this godforsaken place? Didn't I just tell you? It won't be long before you become like us, Qinzhua answered. Yi Qingtang was speechless. We became like that because we stepped into the cursed sacred land. This mystic realm, Yuan Di explained. Cursed land? This was not the first time Yi Qingtang had heard of this phrase. Previously in the land of infinite demons, Jiang Yu and the rest had also been trapped in a similar place. However, compared to Jiang Yu and the rest, Yuan Di and the others appeared to have suffered a much more terrible fate. All this resulted from the original sin of humans. Sigh, Yuan Di couldn't help sighing softly before he glanced at Yi Qingtang. Do you know where the first domain is? Yi Qingtang frowned slightly as doubt filled her eyes. The first domain. Chapter 1718, The Cursed Mystic Realm. 1. The first domain was used by the true gods to imprison heavenly demons, so that they could never escape. But the heavenly demons and humans formed an alliance. Humans, who once worshipped the true gods, chose to betray them and released all those demons who were trapped inside the first domain. The humans' betrayal destroyed the first domain's imprisonment of the heavenly demons. The demons regained their freedom and many true gods died as they battled against the heavenly demons. Those dead true gods bore a deep hatred against the humans for their betrayal. Their godly souls disintegrated to form this mystic realm. This realm was woven out of the curse that the true gods cast upon the traitorous humans. No human who stepped into this realm could leave it alive. They would be trapped forever inside beyond death's reach. Until their flesh rotted off and their blood ran dry and they turned into bare white bones. Even so, they would remain alive, forever trapped in this realm, unable to die even if they wanted to. They would forever suffer the torment of extreme cold and intense heat. The true gods who died, part of them turned into the freezing ice fields we are standing upon. The other part formed the scorching hot lands. These two areas exist in two extremities. Over here, you will never be able to escape the soul-crushing cold, while in the scorching hot lands, you will have to suffer an unbearably blazing heat. Yuan Di narrated the history of the mystic realm to Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang was shaken by Yuan Di's explanation. Due to the betrayal of the humans, the heavenly demons reappeared on earth while the true gods, who had done so much for the humans, ended up making the biggest sacrifice. No one would be able to forgive such a betrayal. This was originally the human sin. The curse starts from the moment a human steps into the mystic realm. The curse is already on you now. Yuan Di glanced at Yi Qingtang, as if expecting her to give up all hope. But you are rather lucky. I heard that the Ice King was stirred up just now. It is already the greatest fortune to be able to escape from him. As a skeleton, you can at least have some freedom. If you were swallowed by the Ice King, you will become part of it. Conscious with your own mind but forever trapped within it. That kind of torment is enough to cause a mental breakdown. Yuan Di patted Yi Qingtang on the shoulder with its rickety bones. Anyway, no one would be able to escape from this place. Is there really no way to leave this place? Yi Qingtang asked. Yuan Di hesitated a moment but didn't say anything. He just stood up and left. The rest of the skeletons could not even be bothered to join the conversation. They had been here for so long that they were already used to the endless despair and torment. Yi Qingtang didn't understand how the immortal footsteps mystic realm had suddenly turned into the cursed mystic realm of the true gods. If you really wish to know how to leave this place, you have to enter that cave and make your inquiry inside. Qin Zhua, who had remained silent for a long time, suddenly spoke up. He pointed at a small cave at the side of the canyon. Thank you. Yi Qingtang looked at Qingtang gratefully. But Qin Zhua just continued to sit there, using the snow to polish his sword of destruction. Wasting no time, Yi Qingtang immediately headed toward the cave. The entrance to that cave was very small and narrow. Even for someone as petite as Yi Qingtang, she had to bend over to enter. After walking a few meters, Yi Qingtang saw a wretched-looking skull placed upon an ice platform. Chapter 1719, The Cursed Mystic Realm. 2. Little girl, you must be new to this place, the skull suddenly asked. Yi Qingtang was slightly taken aback. This skull was still alive. Just as well, carry me out, I want to enjoy some sunlight, the skull commanded. Yi Qingtang was speechless. There was no sun outside. But thinking of Chinjua's earlier words, she went forward and put little white tiger down before picking up the skull. Then she walked out of the cave. The atmosphere outside became somewhat strange when the other skeletons saw Yi Qingtang carrying that skull outside. On the other hand, the skull was very satisfied having been brought out of the cave. "Little girl, have you come to ask me how to leave this mystic realm?" the skull asked. "Yes." The skull chuckled. "It must be that rascal Qinjue who told you to come." "Never mind. Since you were nice enough to bring me out here, I will tell you. But I must warn you that all those who tried to leave this place came to a miserable end. To this day, no one has been able to leave. It might be better if you just give in and settle down Harg." The skull suddenly cried out in pain. The others didn't seem surprised at his cry. "What's the matter?" Yi Qingtang saw that the skull seemed to be quivering in pain. The skull trembled for some time before finally taking a deep breath. "Nothing serious. It's just that my limbs are being eaten by some monster." "Yi Qingtang, what the hell? I say, little girl. Stop thinking about leaving this place. Just look at him. It's because he kept trying to leave that the bones of the rest of his body were dismembered by monsters. All he has left is that skull. Although the rest of his body is separated from him, he can still feel the pain of being bitten, chewed on, trampled upon and torn apart. There are so many monsters in this mystic realm that his body has already been split into several hundred pieces. Several hundred kinds of pain merged together and tormenting you every single second of eternity. Can you endure that?" The giant skeleton snorted as he looked at Yi Qingtang with a questioning tilt of its head. Yi Qingtang's face instantly turned grim. "He's right. This is the kind of risk you must bear if you wish to leave this place. Now, all I have left is this skull. Are you willing to take on such a risk?" the skull asked with a smile. Yi Qingtang took a deep breath. "Can you please tell me how to leave this place?" The skull laughed out loud. "Young people are truly fearless. Since you wish to know, I will tell you. This mystic realm has 3 parts. The first is the frozen ice fields where we are at now. The other is the scorched hot lands. The final one is the cemetery of the true gods. You have to pass through the frozen ice fields and the scorched hot lands before you will find the cemetery of the true gods. You must destroy the skeleton of the cursed true god. Only then will you be able to undo the curse and leave this place. Have you gone to the cemetery of the true gods before?" Yi Qingtang asked. "Of course. How else did I end up like this? But even though I have gone before, I can't bring you there." The skull seemed to have read Yi Qingtang's mind, then he continued. "I am already completely dismembered. Even if I manage to leave, I won't be truly human again and I don't know what will become of me. Anyway, I never wish to step foot again inside the cemetery of the true gods." Chapter 1720, The Cursed Mystic Realm, 3. At that time, he and over 100 powerful practitioners forced their way through the freezing ice fields and scorching hot lands to finally reach the cemetery of the true gods. But in the end, only this lone skull of his returned. "Little girl, I warn you, just stay here. If it is really that easy to leave, why would we be all trapped here like this for tens of thousands of years?" Yuan Di spoke up. "Since there is hope, why shouldn't I fight for it? No matter how terrible the consequences, it will just be slightly worse off than staying here forever." Yi Qingtang could tell that this mystic realm was a very frightening place, but the thought of waiting here for eternity until her flesh rotted away to bare bones, this was something she absolutely could not withstand. Everyone in the first mainland was still waiting for her. How could she remain trapped here in this manner? The rest of the skeletons didn't comment on Yi Qingtang's statement. None of them expressed any approval. "Thank you for your help." Yi Qingtang offered her thanks to the skull respectfully. Even though he was not willing to lead her there, he already told her how to leave this place. "It looks like you want change your mind." The skull chuckled. "Never mind, if you wish to go, just put me back in my cave. I have already seen all I want to see today. So Yi Qingtang followed the skull's instructions and placed him back in the cave. Then she picked up little white tiger and was about to leave when she found Qin Zhuo standing right before her. Senior Qin, Yi Qingtang greeted Qin Zhuo respectfully. Qin Zhuo's pitch-black eye sockets bore into Yi Qingtang. He suddenly raised his hand and held out his sword of destruction to her. Senior Qin, what are you doing? Yi Qingtang was taken aback. This sword has been by my side for tens of thousands of years. I will never leave this place, so I am handing it over to you now. If you are able to leave here someday, please bring it to the Qin family in the second domain, and hand it over to my descendants, Qin Zhuo said. Qin Zhuo's meaning was clear. After all, he was already a skeleton, and even if he could leave this place, he would immediately die. The only reason he was alive in this skeletal state was because of the curse. Yi Qingtang finally understood why Qin Zhuo helped her earlier. I will definitely fulfill your request if I am able to leave this place. Yi Qingtang accepted the sword of destruction and carefully placed this highly coveted weapon into her space ring. Qin Zhuo nodded and turned to leave. Yi Qingtang immediately called out, Senior Qin. Qin Zhuo paused. If the curse is broken, what will happen to you all? Don't worry about it, Qin Zhuo replied mildly. His words made her relax somewhat. She carried little white tiger and left the canyon. After knowing the dangers of this mystic realm, Yi Qingtang was even more anxious to leave this place. If she stayed here for too long, she would probably end up becoming a bare skeleton like Qin Zhuo and the others. Yi Qingtang realized that the raging winds had already simmered down when she left the canyon. What she most urgently had to do now was to find Jiang Xiaobai and the rest, and tell them everything she had just learned. No matter what kind of relationship they had outside, faced with such a terrifying mystic realm, they had no choice but to rely on each other. Chapter 1721, Frozen Ice Fields. 1. Yi Qingtang spent a long time walking upon the frozen ice fields, in accordance to the skull's instructions. Icy winds continuously assaulted her body to the point that her already fair face was so cold that it had completely drained of color. If not for the warmth of little white tiger in her arms, she would probably have frozen to death. That skull had said that there were 3 areas to this mystic realm. Although he didn't point out the exact direction of the cemetery of the true gods, Yi Qingtang surmised that since she had to pass through the frozen ice fields and the scorched hot lands before arriving at the cemetery, it was likely that the cemetery would be situated in the innermost depths of the mystic realm. All she had to do was to walk in the opposite direction of where she came from. On the way, Yi Qingtang saw plenty of frozen corpses. She tried to find traces of Jiang Xiaobai and the rest, but the frozen ice fields were so vast that it was near impossible to find anyone. Is anyone there? A familiar voice suddenly sounded out. That's Sang Feiyu's voice. Having been alone for so long, Yi Qingtang couldn't help being excited at hearing a familiar voice. She quickened her steps and hurried over to the source. Sang Feiyu's voice had come over from a patch of frozen trees. As she carried little white tiger, Yi Qingtang carefully navigated her way around those trees which were covered in sharp, spiky icicles. She lightened her steps. Sang Feiyu's voice sounded increasingly clear as she approached the source. She seemed to be calling out for something, and also softly humming an old tune to herself now and then. That woman still has the mood to hum to herself under such circumstances. Looks like she isn't in any danger. Little White Tiger was impressed by Sang Feiyu's light-hearted attitude. However, when Yi Qingtang arrived at the source of the voice, she saw a wide smile on Sang Feiyu's delicate little face. Those frozen, white lips were split apart in a jagged manner, and instead of a pink tongue between those lips, a bloodied, icy vine was sticking out. Is there anyone who can come and accompany me? Sang Feiyu's voice sounded out once again. But this time, Yi Qingtang was not at all inclined to step forward. In her arms, Little White Tiger widened its eyes at the sight, and it nearly threw up its insides. The Sang Feiyu before them was no longer human. Her petite frame had been split into 4 sections by an icy vine. Her limbs had been torn apart and then connected back together by icy vines which penetrated the open wounds on her body like barbed wire. Her head had also been wound back to the body. The icy vine protruding out of her lips had entered her head via an opening in her neck. "It's so cold here, who can come accompany me?" the vine in Sang Feiyu's mouth kept wriggling about. The frozen blood on it looked exceptionally demonic. "She is still alive. She is still conscious." Little White Tiger widened its eyes as it noticed the despondency and bitter pain in Sang Feiyu's eyes. Her features were twisted in pain and it was clear that she did not intend for the words to be coming out from her mouth. She had become this icy vine's plaything. But she was still completely conscious. The disturbing sight made Yi Qingtang nauseous as she stared at Sang Feiyu, who had been a happy, chatty girl not too long ago. She watched as the icy vine manipulated the girl's broken limbs like a puppet, and how every movement caused gut-wrenching pain to Sang Feiyu. Chapter 1722, Frozen Ice Fields, 2. Sang Feiyu was clearly in extreme agony but her lips continued to hum that disturbingly relaxed tune. Splattered across those icy vines were streaks of frozen blood. Beautiful and gruesome. Crack crack. Sang Feiyu's jaws strained as they were forced apart, emitting the sounds of bones breaking. Bloodied tears trickled down from her eyes, halted by the extreme chill before they could even fall from her chin. Yi Qingtang quietly clenched her fists. Although she didn't have much interaction with Sang Feiyu, she could not bear this morbid scene before her. "You are unable to save her," Little White Tiger reminded in a low growl, as it observed her tightly pursed lips. "I know." Yi Qingtang lowered her voice. Sang Feiyu was more powerful than her and even she could not escape those icy vines. "Let's hurry, we have to keep going. Who knows how many monsters are in this place," Little White Tiger said. Yi Qingtang glanced at Sang Feiyu again. She suppressed the impulse she felt welling up inside her, and flew up into the air with Little White Tiger in her arms. Only by destroying the cursed true god would those souls trapped in this mystic realm be freed. Yi Qingtang never expected the first companion she would find to be in such a state. Her already heavy heart grew even more grim. "It looks like she entered this place when she was trying to escape from the Ice King." Yi Qingtang nodded. Previously she still had the intention of sharing the information she had gathered with the others. But she was not so optimistic anymore. Sang Feiyu was no weakling. In fact, she was even more powerful than herself. But she ended up in such a wretched state, tormented by some monster. She really wondered how long the others could survive. Yi Qingtang had just flown a few meters away when that icy vine tree detected her presence. It suddenly shot out countless icy vines toward Yi Qingtang. "Run!" An anguished cry resonated through the air. Yi Qingtang's heart gave a heavy jolt. It was Sang Feiyu's voice. Her final rally. Yi Qingtang didn't dare to stop. She fled with Little White Tiger in her arms. Those icy vines seemed to have latched onto Yi Qingtang's presence. Relentless, they continued flying toward her, trying their best to drag her back to make her their newest plaything. "Pa!" Yi Qingtang got a vicious smack in the back by one of the ice vines. A searing pain radiated throughout her entire body. She swayed from the agony and nearly fell from the sky. Little White Tiger immediately spewed a stream of white flames toward that vine. Yi Qingtang gritted her teeth in pain as she flew desperately away with the Little White Tiger tight in her arms. She could not stop. The ice forest beneath her feet seemed to come alive. Scores of icy vines flew straight up at her like hands from the depths of hell trying to drag her down into the abyss. She faced the constant danger of imminent death. "Save me, don't leave me behind," Sang Feiyu's voice suddenly sounded out from somewhere behind Yi Qingtang. She instinctively turned back and saw a frozen, purplish tongue stuck upon one of the ice vines. It vibrated as that spine-chilling voice drifted over to Yi Qingtang's ears. It was Sang Feiyu's tongue. Boom! A huge explosion sounded out from somewhere in front of Yi Qingtang, followed by a series of tremors which spread through the frozen forest. Before Yi Qingtang could see what was happening, an immense black figure suddenly barreled out from within the forest. Chapter 1723, Frozen Ice Fields, 3. That black figure charged straight at Yi Qingtang and she quickly dodged. But the black figure still managed to scratch her shoulder, leaving behind a garish wound so deep that the bone could be seen. The black figure then fell down to the ground and stepped upon those pursuing ice vines. It was then that Yi Qingtang finally saw clearly what that black figure was. Monster. It looked like some kind of leopard, yet its body was double that of a rhinoceros. A necklace made up of human heads hung around its neck. Those human heads had already turned into skulls, but one was still fresh and new. Qin Mo, Yi Qingtang's head was instantly filled by a buzzing noise when she saw that fresh human head. Qin Mo was one of the top 10 in the previous martial arts championship. He had also entered the mystic realm together with the rest. But as he was a quiet loner with an insignificant presence, people often forgot about him. But now, Qin Mo's head was hanging from that monster's neck. Those bloodshot eyes were still swiveling about as he stared straight at Yi Qingtang. It hurts so much. Yi Qingtang, please stay behind and accompany me. Qin Mo's twisted lips spewed out a continuous stream of bitter words. Why did I end up meeting such a monster? Why am I not dead yet? Yi Qingtang, I am in such pain, such great pain, why me? Why wasn't it you the one who ended up like this instead? Qin Mo's bloodshot eyes were filled with a poisonous grievance. But before he could finish his words, the monster suddenly reached up one paw and tore off Qin Mo's lower jaw. Qin Mo's eyes bulged out in pain. Roar! The monster seemed to hate Qin Mo's whining. Its accessories should just quietly hang upon its neck. Taking advantage of the monster's rage, Yi Qingtang fled with little white tiger in her arms. She could not even be bothered about her injury for now. There was no time to stop. That monster and those ice vines were constantly trying to think of ways to take her life. Under the freezing cold and endless snow, Yi Qingtang poured in all her energy to escape. She was drenched in sweat from her efforts, and her sweat immediately froze the moment they seeped out of her pores. That monster and the icy vines had no intention of letting Yi Qingtang escape. They continued to chase after her, persistent and unyielding. Yi Qingtang concentrated all her strength into flying as quickly as she could. Only then did she manage to put in some distance between them. The roars and howls finally faded away after Yi Qingtang flew on for a long time. That deadly ice forest was also no longer beneath her feet. She felt like she was nearly drained of all energy, but she continued to feel the urgent need to put a little more distance between herself and that deadly place. The wound on her shoulder radiated endless waves of intense pain, but she couldn't stop. Not yet, not now. Only when her energy was nearly depleted did she start to plummet to the ground. Yi Qingtang would be fatally injured if she continued to plummet at this speed. Little White Tiger's feline eyes widened at the high speed that Yi Qingtang was falling. It suddenly leaped out of her arms and its tiny body suddenly expanded several times. It gripped Yi Qingtang's clothes between its jaws and tried to pull her back. But her clothing had frozen over and was crushed to bits under the pressure of his jaws. Like a broken kite, Yi Qingtang continued to freefall. Damn it! Little White Tiger cursed before pouncing straight towards Yi Qingtang. It reached out and pulled her into its soft fur before flipping over and landing heavily upon the icy grounds. Chapter 1724, Frozen Ice Fields, 4. Even after the heavy impact, Little White Tiger managed to drag itself up and gazed at the unconscious Yi Qingtang. It was all cold around Yi Qingtang. Her wound had turned purplish from the start of gangrene. She had expended all her energy and was unable to maintain her body warmth. In the frozen ice fields, a person's energy expenditure would be over 10 times higher than normal. This kind of temperature would be fatal to anyone. Little White Tiger blew a stream of warm air and quickly pulled Yi Qingtang into its soft furry belly. It used its own body warmth to raise Yi Qingtang's temperature. Yi Qingtang slowly came to and felt waves of intense pain radiating from her shoulder. But a series of moist warmth helped to lessen the pain. When she opened her eyes, she saw her enlarged little white tiger carefully licking her wound, trying to prevent the flesh around the wound from turning gangrenous from the extreme cold. Seeing her awaken, little white tiger breathed a sigh of relief. Yi Qingtang's heart warmed when she saw how carefully and gently the little white tiger was using the tip of its tongue to lick her wound, so that the sharp barbs on its tongue wouldn't hurt her. "I am fine now." Yi Qingtang lifted her arm with effort to stroke little white tiger's fur. Everything in this mystic realm seemed to be vying for her life the moment she stepped into it. It had just been a short time since she entered the realm, but she felt like she had endured a long bloody battle. Retrieving an elixir from her space ring, Yi Qingtang was thankful that it was of some use. Although Dharma treasures were useless here, elixirs were still effective. Snow and silence engulfed her surroundings. Apart from herself and little white tiger, Yi Qingtang could not see any forms of life. The frozen ice fields, the scorched hot lands. Cemetery of the true gods, Yi Qingtang murmured to herself. She had yet to even step out of the frozen ice fields. She didn't dare to imagine the horrors that awaited her in the scorched hot lands and the cemetery of the true gods. First was Sang Feiyu, then Qin Mo. In addition, there was Wu Xiao, who was swallowed by the Ice King. The top 10 from the martial arts championship had now been pared down to only 3 persons. Yi Qingtang didn't know whether the rest were still alive, or, have they already died, in these frozen ice fields. "Xiaobai, you'd better be okay." Yi Qingtang frowned slightly. Her greatest worry was Jiang Xiaobai's safety. As little white tiger was very big now, it was too conspicuous in such a dangerous place. Yi Qingtang dressed her wound with a simple bandage and swallowed her elixir. She then made little white tiger small again and carried it as she flew up into the sky. If she was lucky, she might be able to spot Jiang Xiaobai's figure on the way. She had no time or energy to bother about the rest. Her heart constricted whenever she thought of how that cheerful, goofy kid might die here. Harsh winds howled as white snow continued to fall. Yi Qingtang forged ahead as she tried to locate Jiang Xiaobai. But she saw nothing. Frozen mountain ranges meandered all around and silence permeated the air. This place was like a dead zone, there were no signs of life at all. Halfway along, Yi Qingtang saw a long sword stuck into a block of ice. The sword was dripping with fresh blood and a severed hand was still grasping tightly onto the handle. That patch of red blood was exceptionally garish and eye-catching against the snowy backdrop. With just one glance, Yi Qingtang recognized that the sword belonged to Zhan Rao. But there was no sign of him anywhere except that severed hand and that lone, long sword. Chapter 1725, Frozen Ice Fields, 5. The aura of death hung constantly over the mystic realm. Even the skies were not safe. Yi Qingtang could see from afar, the shining stars in the sky in front of her. These lights were all gathered in one spot and were shining incessantly. A sense of foreboding rose in her throat. She quickly hugged the little white tiger and swerved toward the iceberg below her feet. She found a cave and quickly hid inside. But in the next instant, a huge shadow passed over her head. Yi Qingtang looked up quietly and saw an ice phoenix over 100 meters wide flying above her. The ice phoenix was covered in icy blue flames which fell like rain over them as it passed by. But before she could even blink, the entire iceberg had been covered in ice fire. The ice fire conveyed not a shred of warmth and only made their surroundings even colder. Yi Qingtang's teeth were already chattering before she even touched the flame. No matter how hard she tried to circulate her energy, there was no way to combat the cold at all. Just the scales from the ice phoenix were this terrifying. Yi Qingtang hid quietly in the cave, her body as cold as ice as Little White Tiger tried to warm her up as much as possible so she wouldn't freeze to death. After a long time, the sky started to darken and the ice flames gradually faded from the iceberg. It was only then that Yi Qingtang climbed out of the cave, her fingertips already purple from the cold. Wherever the ice flames had touched her body was shockingly cold and chafed painfully against her clothes. She had thought that she was safe for now but froze as she climbed to the top of the mountain. The ice flames hadn't vanished at all. They had converged to become a huge ice flame monster. The ice flame monster roared as it sensed Yi Qingtang and rushed straight towards her. Yi Qingtang felt the strong breath of the monster rushing towards her. Without thinking, she quickly grabbed Little White Tiger and streaked towards the sky. But a pair of flaming wings burst forth from the monster as it flew up as well at a terrifying speed. In an instant, the ice flame monster had caught up to Yi Qingtang. She couldn't escape. Ominous thoughts formed in Yi Qingtang's mind. As she turned back and saw the monster rushing towards her, Yi Qingtang gritted her teeth, lifting her fingers to conjure up two black flames, and rushed towards the beast. As the black flames and the ice flames collided, powerful waves rippled through the sky. The ice flame monster howled angrily. It knocked the black flames away and rushed towards Yi Qingtang with its mouth wide open. Yi Qingtang could feel her black flames have an effect on the ice monster. Without any other thoughts in her mind, she released all the energy she had, making the black flames around her burn even stronger. She threw Little White Tiger over her shoulder as she blocked the monster's incoming mouth with both of her hands. The ice flame monster's teeth pierced straight through Yi Qingtang's arms, the excruciating pain spreading through her entire body as it instantly tore through her skin and flesh, leaving a searing burn in its wake. Yi Qingtang's teeth broke as she gritted her teeth hard, not daring to let go. It was going to bite her arms off if she even let go a little. And that would only mean death. Chapter 1726, Frozen Ice Fields, 6, she was going to fight until the end. Yi Qingtang focused all the black flames onto her arms and directed it straight into the monster's mouth. As the black flames poured towards the monster's mouth, it trembled and bit down even harder, as though it wanted to utterly crush her arms. Yi Qingtang could feel every bit of the pain from her bones being impaled by the monster as her blood dripped continuously, yet she continued blasting at the monster with her black flames. Sensing the dire situation, the Little White Tiger got up. With its petite body, it jumped straight into the monster's mouth through the gaps between its teeth. Little White Tiger then opened its mouth and shot a jet of white flames straight into the ice flame monster's body. Bang! The ice monster covered in black flames exploded. At long last, the ice flames intertwined with black flames flew all over the place as the bite over Yi Qingtang's arms finally faded. Little White Tiger jumped onto Yi Qingtang's back as his body enlarged. He grabbed Yi Qingtang hastily with his mouth to dodge the incoming ice flames. The ice flames began taking shape again as they fell onto the ground. Cursing inwardly, Little White Tiger quickly dragged Yi Qingtang away from the place as fast as possible. Damn it, just the scales from the ice phoenix were enough to make such a terrifying monster. And they even reformed after being split apart. How many crazy things were in this goddamn place? Going as quickly as he could, using his speed, Little White Tiger brought Yi Qingtang away from the ice flame-covered iceberg, not daring to stay another second. It only stopped to rest in a cave after it had escaped to the foot of the ice mountain. By now, its mouth was filled with the coppery taste of blood. The wound on Yi Qingtang's arm had stained its entire mouth. Little White Tiger quickly put Yi Qingtang down, looking over her arms, which had become a gory mess of blood and flesh. The only saving grace was that her bones had only been mildly fractured, not broken. If they had, she would die here. But even if that was the case, the grotesque wounds still worried Little White Tiger greatly. The monster had been covered in ice flames, and wherever it touched froze instantly. Since Yi Qingtang's arms had already been frozen from the flames, some areas had already turned purple from the cold. Yi Qingtang leaned against the walls of the cave, her face deathly pale. She braced herself against the pain and opened up her space ring to take out the elixirs. Her entire body felt like it was being ripped apart from the inside. Her wound was worse than she had thought. She had spent all her energy and only barely got rid of the ice flame monster, which was merely a small fry in this mystic realm. Regardless of whether it was the Ice Phoenix, the Ice King or the Ice Vine monster, they were all monsters that mere humans could never even dream of defeating. There were so many powerful men from the second domain who didn't dare take one step out of the canyon because they knew how terrifying these creatures were. As someone who was only from the Paragon level, she was a mere ant in the eyes of these monsters. It's already late today. Let's rest here. You're not going anywhere, in that condition anyway. Wanting to give as much comfort as possible, Little White Tiger wrapped Yi Qingtang in his warm tummy inside. Yi Qingtang nodded slightly. It had been a harrowing day, and she was already completely exhausted. If she were to continue on in this state, she would definitely die. She had to rest and regain her strength before continuing on this deadly journey. Utterly drained, Yi Qingtang quickly fell asleep buried in Little White Tiger's warmth. After it sensed her fall asleep, Little White Tiger shut its eyes as well. Darkness covered the ground as night fell. In the midst of the chilling, lonely land of ice, the wind brought with it the scattered voices of the dead. In the dark, a pair of eyes focused on the woman and the beast in the cave. Chapter 1727, Being Watched, 1. Yi Qingtang didn't know how long she had slept. She kept instinctively snuggling towards Little White Tiger to enjoy its warmth. The intense pain continuously radiating from the wound hurt so much it made her scalp tingle. The massive loss of blood caused her body to feel extremely weak and tired. Luckily, before entering Mystic Realm, she had prepared a good quantity of elixirs and food rations, and Elder Qian had also given her a number of items. Although those Dharma treasures were useless here, the healing elixirs were what she most needed now. For the first time in her life, Yi Qingtang realized what it felt like to have elixirs as her meals. The monsters here are very strange. Although your wound has mostly healed, it just looks weird. Little White Tiger gazed at the groggy Yi Qingtang. Although her wound had gradually healed after she ingested a large quantity of elixirs, the newly grown skin and flesh was not soft and pink. Instead it had a greenish-gray hue. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly as she studied her wound. She had already detected that wounds incurred over here continued to emit waves of bone-piercing chills even after healing. The surrounding flesh also experienced bouts of phantom aches she could not explain. It was like having an ice spike embedded within the flesh. Do you feel anything strange about this place? Little White Tiger gazed outside the cave. As Yi Qingtang's injuries had been too grievous, they had been hiding out in this cave over the past few days. Luckily this cave was rather remote and no other monsters discovered them. Otherwise, it would be a one-way road to hell in Yi Qingtang's condition. Nevertheless, although the past few days had been peaceful, Little White Tiger couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It just felt like something was watching them in the darkness. Whenever it expanded its awareness to probe the area, it could not detect anything at all. But the moment it retracted its senses, the tingling feeling of being watched appeared once again. Little White Tiger told Yi Qingtang of its suspicions. Yi Qingtang's perceptiveness was not as good as Little White Tiger's. In addition, she was very weak and didn't have much awareness of her surroundings. While Little White Tiger tried to probe several times, it was to no avail. It couldn't help doubting whether it was being overly suspicious because the mystic realm was just too strange. More time passed and Yi Qingtang had recovered almost back to her normal state, so it was not feasible to continue hanging around this place like this. They would have to continue their way toward the cemetery of the true gods as quickly as possible to destroy the bones of the cursed true god. Only then could they truly escape this godforsaken place. Little White Tiger noticed Yi Qingtang's pale face and bravely decided to head out alone first to scout out their route. It was still strong enough to run if it encountered any monsters. Meanwhile, Yiqing Tang remained in the cave to await news. She watched little white tiger leave the cave. Without its body heat, she once again felt the bone-piercing chill. Curling up instinctively, she circulated her spirit energy to maintain her body temperature. Perhaps she had expended too much energy before. Yiqing Tang's stomach started to rumble. She opened her space ring and took out some food to eat, then washed it down with some water from melted snow. While she swallowed the rations mechanically, she thought about how she could safely escape this mystic realm. As Yiqing Tang pondered what to do next, she suddenly heard footsteps outside. That noise was very light and different from little white tiger's usual padded footsteps. Chapter 1728, Being Watched, 2. Sprinting into action, Yiqing Tang went on high alert. She tossed aside her half-eaten food and tried her best to merge into the shadows. That noise was definitely not little white tiger. What on earth was it? At this point, Yiqing Tang had yet to fully recover and little white tiger was not by her side. She would be dead meat if she encountered some monster from this mystical realm. Time passed slowly. Yiqing Tang was extremely vigilant, hiding within the shadows. She fixed her eyes upon the entrance of the cave, her hand already firmly grasping her sword. A black figure suddenly flashed past the entrance of the cave. Before Yiqing Tang could ready herself, that black figure retreated from the entrance. That thing flashed past again but didn't attack the hidden Yiqing Tang. Even so, Yiqing Tang didn't dare to let down her guard. She was drenched in cold sweat from anxiety. They had already been too careless before. Little white tiger's earlier suspicion was probably accurate. There really was something outside the cave watching them. However, what was it? Why had it not attacked them yet? Yiqing Tang was full of doubt, but also slightly relieved. It was certainly no normal being if it could evade little white tiger's detection. Although Yiqing Tang didn't know why it had yet to attack them, she did not dare to continue staying in this cave. No matter what, they had to leave immediately after little white tiger returned. As she waited, Yiqing Tang continued hiding in the shadows. She did not move a single step, nor were there any more strange noises from the outside. The black figure didn't appear again. But somehow, Yiqing Tang had a feeling that the thing was still there. It could be hiding right outside the cave as it had over the past few days, crouching in the darkness and watching their every move. The thought sent a chill down her spine. A long time passed and Yiqing Tang's hands had already gone white from the cold. A familiar voice finally echoed through the cave. "Don't worry, I had a look outside and there are no monsters around. Don't you think that's strange?" Little white tiger shook off the snow accumulated on its body. Having been pursued by several monsters for some time, little white tiger couldn't help but find it rather strange that there were no monsters at all when it scouted the area. The monsters here are not that easily detected, moreover, you are not human. Those monsters might not take the initiative to attack you. Yiqing Tang didn't dare to let her guard down even though little white tiger had returned safely. This mystic realm was created by the true gods to punish humans. All the curses were targeted at humans. As little white tiger was not human, those monsters might not proactively attack it. However, this was merely conjecture on Yiqing Tang's part. "Well, shall we wait here a couple more days then? Wait until you are better?" Little white tiger questioned. Yiqing Tang shook her head. "Let's leave now." Little white tiger looked perplexed. Did she feel that it was not safe outside? Why then? Little white tiger was about to ask but saw Yiqing Tang glancing at the cave entrance before shooting little white tiger a meaningful look. The beast's heart gave a slight jolt. My intuition was correct? Chapter 1729, Being Watched, 3, Yiqing Tang nodded. A cold chill seemed to spread throughout little white tiger's body. Damn, and it thought it was being paranoid. It never expected there was really something outside watching them. Given the situation, Little White Tiger didn't dare to hesitate any longer. It picked up Yi Qingtang and dashed out of the cave. Yi Qingtang clung onto Little White Tiger's back. She had yet to fully recover and had no choice but to let Little White Tiger carry her. But before they had even traveled over 100 meters, Yi Qingtang instinctively turned back to glance at the cave. She saw that the black figure had been hiding under the snow, and it suddenly charged toward them. The black figure was very fast, so fast that Yi Qingtang could not see what it was. That thing seemed to be targeting Yi Qingtang and Little White Tiger. With its agility, it was soon right on their tail. Damn, is that thing following us? Little White Tiger could feel something terrifying behind them and catching up at a fast pace. Don't stop. Yi Qingtang furrowed her brows. She could see that the black figure was quickly approaching. Even Little White Tiger's full speed seemed slow in comparison. In both her previous and current lives, Yi Qingtang had never seen something that could match the speed of that black figure. How many more types of these terrifying creatures existed in this mystic realm? Nevertheless, just as Yi Qingtang and Little White Tiger were panicking over the black figure behind them, a series of web-like cracks appeared on the glacier in front of them. In the next second, water gushed out of those cracks and morphed into numerous giant ice wolves. Shit! Each of those giant wolves were 3 meters in height and possessed sharp icy fangs and malevolent eyes. Mighty howls emitted from their wide, bloodthirsty jaws. Damn! There are dangers everywhere. This place is relentless. Little White Tiger exclaimed when it saw the pack of giant ice wolves charging toward them. Those giant ice wolves emitted waves of powerful aura as mighty as that of a paragon-level practitioner. What kind of joke was this? Over a dozen paragon-level giant ice wolves, any one of which could easily tear Little White Tiger and Yi Qingtang into pieces. Moreover, there was also some strange creature pursuing them from behind. They were dead meat. Yi Qingtang's heart sank all the way to the bottom. Her breathing seemed to stop as she watched the pack of giant ice wolves charging her way. But just as that pack of giant ice wolves was about to pounce at Yi Qingtang, a tremendous demonic aura suddenly surged from behind her. That demonic aura passed over Yi Qingtang and Little White Tiger, heading straight towards the pack of giant ice wolves. The giant ice wolves seemed to suffer an immense blow the moment that demonic aura made contact. With wretched howls, they stopped dead in their tracks, before standing there shivering and whimpering. It was like some powerful force was holding them there. Yi Qingtang stared at the shivering pack of giant ice wolves and confusion flashed past her eyes. Her heart quivered as she observed the demonic aura that permeated the air. Chapter 1730, Little Heavenly Demon, 1, she instinctively turned back to look. A pitch-black little thing was a few meters behind her. It was standing upon the snowy grounds and exuding a demonic aura that was intensely suffocating. That aura radiated in all directions continuously, completely suppressing the pack of giant ice wolves. Little White Tiger turned to take a look, and that one glance scared it so much that its eyeballs bulged out in an almost comical manner. A little thing surrounded by black demonic aura such that no one could see what it looked like. The only feature that could be seen through that aura was a pair of devilish eyes. Damn, is that a heavenly demon? Little White Tiger widened its eyes in disbelief. Heavenly demon? Yi Qingtang was stunned. Apart from a heavenly demon, who else could exude such a powerful and pure demonic aura? But, why is there still a heavenly demon over here? Moreover, it seems to be helping us. Little White Tiger narrowed its eyes suspiciously. Yi Qingtang would never have thought that it was a heavenly demon who was watching them from outside the cave. But the legends claimed that they only existed in. To be exact, it is a little heavenly demon. Look at its size, it seems to be a newborn. Little White Tiger sized up the little heavenly demon as he speculated. Little heavenly demon, why is it helping us? Yi Qingtang stared at those devilish eyes. How would I know? Perhaps it feels that we are its prey and will not allow other monsters to touch us. Or perhaps, it likes us better. Little White Tiger also didn't understand. Would a heavenly demon take a fancy toward a human and a beast? Yi Qingtang felt it was more likely that the heavenly demon was just reserving them for later. Regardless, she was completely despondent at the thought. Being targeted by a heavenly demon was 10 times worse than being targeted by an ice king. On the other hand, it was still a baby heavenly demon. But a heavenly demon was as powerful as a true god. Could they have any hopes of defending themselves against it? No matter what, at least it has no intention of killing us. For now. Let's hurry up and leave. The heavenly demon has no likes, dislikes, happiness or sadness. No one can guess their temperament. Gazing at the pack of giant ice wolves, Little White Tiger didn't dare to stay a minute longer. It flew off carrying Yi Qingtang. Who knew why that little heavenly demon had its eye on them? The little heavenly demon stared after Yi Qingtang and Little White Tiger as they left. Its eyes seemed to narrow uneasily, and in the blink of an eye, it continued to follow them at a frightening pace. Damn, why is it following us again? Little White Tiger could clearly feel the demon aura behind it and broke out in cold sweat. This little heavenly demon truly had its eye on them. Yi Qingtang was also at a loss. She turned to see the fast-approaching demonic aura, only to discover that although it was following them, it had no intention of catching up. As fast as it was, it maintained a few meters gap behind them. Perhaps because of the little heavenly demon and its thick demon aura, the powerful monsters nearby had all backed off. Yi Qingtang's journey ended up being very smooth sailing. After flying for a long time, the sky was gradually darkening and Little White Tiger had to find a glacier to stop and rest. Chapter 1731, Little Heavenly Demon, 2. When Yi Qingtang and Little White Tiger finally stopped, the little heavenly demon also stopped. It stood there unmoving, several meters away from Yi Qingtang. Under the yellow evening light, Yi Qingtang could only make out those bright, demonic eyes. They remained fixed upon herself. But somehow, Yi Qingtang felt that those eyes did not possess any ill intentions. It was just watching her. But why? Just how long is this little heavenly demon going to follow us? Is it going to kill us or let us go? It should just do it already. Little White Tiger did not like having the attention of this little heavenly demon. Yi Qingtang sighed softly. She did not understand either, but this little heavenly demon did not seem to have any intention of attacking them. This was good enough. Anyway, Yi Qingtang knew very well that if this little heavenly demon wanted to kill them, both Little White Tiger and her would be no match at all. As a result, she might as well just relax. She took out some rations from her space ring and started to eat. Yi Qingtang had just taken a couple of bites when she realized that the little heavenly demon was moving again. It suddenly started to edge toward Yi Qingtang. Those demon eyes were fixed upon the half-eaten rations in Yi Qingtang's hands. Those eyes started to sparkle. Yi Qingtang, she moved the field rations in her hand from side and side and discovered that the little heavenly demon's eyes were tracking its movement. There was even a sliver of desire in those eyes. Was it hungry? Yi Qingtang suddenly recalled that the first time this little heavenly demon made an appearance was when she took out some food while inside the cave. A suspicion surfaced in Yi Qingtang's mind. She tossed the rations in her hand toward the little heavenly demon. The field rations were still in mid-air when the little heavenly demon pounced toward it. Opening its wide jaws full of sharp teeth, it gobbled up the rations whole. It was really hungry. Yi Qingtang felt like her world had just turned upside down. A powerful heavenly demon was interested in common human food? Was it just teasing her? After swallowing the field rations, the little heavenly demon actually reached out its tongue and licked its lips in satisfaction. Its eyes continued to stare at Yi Qingtang. I think, you'd better feed it until it is full. Otherwise, we might become its food instead. Little White Tiger couldn't help shivering when it looked at the little heavenly eyes, greedy eyes. Yi Qingtang was silent. She immediately searched through her own space ring. Luckily she had prepared a lot of food in her space ring and had yet to consume much of it since entering the mystic realm, so there was still a lot left. Yi Qingtang took out a big piece of dried meat from her space ring. After tearing off a section, she tossed it toward the little heavenly demon. Oh! Before the meat landed on the ground, little heavenly demon once again pounced forward and caught it deftly in its mouth. It looked very satisfied after eating. Yi Qingtang didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. The high and mighty heavenly demon clan produced such a greedy little creature. Nevertheless, as amused as she was, Yi Qingtang still obediently tossed the rest of the dried meat to the little heavenly demon. Chapter 1732, Little Heavenly Demon, 3. The little heavenly demon gobbled it all up. Perhaps it was feeling more cordial after eating, the little heavenly demon started approaching Yi Qingtang. With the dim firelight, Yi Qingtang finally saw the true form of the little heavenly demon. It was a dragon-shaped heavenly demon, only about as high as Yi Qingtang's calf. Its black scales glimmered under the firelight with its short, thick back legs firmly planted on the ground. Meanwhile, it also had a little round belly and tiny front paws, making it look rather adorable. If not for the fact that it was a heavenly demon, Yi Qingtang might have just pulled it into her arms for a cuddle. Meanwhile, the little heavenly demon had no idea what Yi Qingtang was thinking. It tilted its head and gazed at Yi Qingtang. A short, thick dragon's tail protruded from its butt, which wagged from side to side now and then. After seeing that Yi Qingtang was no longer taking out anything more to eat, the little heavenly demon waddled over to Yi Qingtang and gazed up at her. Then it used its little tail to brush her calf. Ah oh! It opened its tiny mouth and whined piteously. Yi Qingtang, Little White Tiger, was also dumbfounded. It had never seen such a greedy heavenly demon. Yi Qingtang had no choice but to take out more food. She knelt down on the ground and tossed it one by one into the little heavenly demon's mouth. In response, the little heavenly demon gave a contented expression. Those demon eyes narrowed in satisfaction as it chewed. As it ate, the little heavenly demon suddenly sneezed. It sniffed about Yi Qingtang's body and that familiar smell relaxed it. It had found her earlier because of her familiar scent. Gurgle, the little heavenly demon gurgled happily before suddenly throwing itself into Yi Qingtang's arms. It wriggled about to find a comfortable position and soon fell asleep. Once it did, it even started to snore. Yi Qingtang stared at the little heavenly demon sleeping in her arms and then at Little White Tiger. Why do I feel? Little White Tiger narrowed its eyes. It seems to treat you like its family member. What the hell? Yi Qingtang was dumbfounded. Don't you possess the mutated heavenly demon bloodline? If I am not wrong, it must have detected the scent of that bloodline. It looks like a newborn and there aren't any other heavenly demons around. So you may be the first familiar smell it has encountered. If that's the case, it is only natural that it treats you as family. Luckily they were not just backup food for the little demon. The corners of Yi Qingtang's lips twitched. But gazing down at the sleeping little heavenly demon, she felt all sorts of conflicted emotions. This little heavenly demon was a dragon-shaped demon. It looked very much like a real dragon and she couldn't help being reminded of her little lightning dragon. But, after little Yu Yun was taken away, all life in the first domain had vanished. Even little lightning dragon had disappeared. You were gravely injured and lost a lot of blood while we were heading to that cave. I guess that was when it detected the heavenly demon scent in your blood and made its way toward you. I was wondering why it kept following us, as if we are its family. This is just a newborn heavenly demon and it has no idea how to recognize the true members of its own kind. As he said this, Little White Tiger glanced at little heavenly demon again, no longer as concerned as before. Chapter 1733, Attack from Both Sides, 1, Yi Qingtang gazed at the sleeping little heavenly demon in wonder. I feel that this is a good thing. If this little heavenly demon thinks you are family, the rest of our journey will be much smoother. Little White Tiger grinned. The horrors of the mystic realm they had seen so far were just the tip of the iceberg. No one knew for sure just how many more terrifying creatures and dangers awaited them. But with little heavenly demon around, they need not be so afraid. Remember those giant ice wolves? They couldn't even move after seeing this little fellow. Do you know what I mean? Little White Tiger shot Yi Qingtang a meaningful look. Yi Qingtang, perhaps due to little heavenly demon's presence, they had not encountered any monsters for some time. Yi Qingtang had been so tense for so long that her already fatigued body was even more weak and frail now. Anyway, since this little fellow wanted to stick to her, there was no need to think too much about the rest for now. Yi Qingtang leaned against little White Tiger's soft fur and soon fell asleep. It was the most peaceful sleep she had enjoyed since stepping onto the frozen ice fields. Yi Qingtang was sound asleep when sunlight shone across the icy lands. Even so, she could vaguely feel a moist warmth on her fingertips. She slowly opened her eyes and was momentarily taken aback by what she saw. Little heavenly demon had awoken and was happily nestled in her arms, nibbling away at her finger with the space ring. It was also wagging its tail happily. Yi Qingtang kept silent. Was the little heavenly demon hungry again? She had taken out food from her space ring in front of the little heavenly demon yesterday. That little fellow seemed to have misunderstood something. Worried that the greedy little heavenly demon might accidentally chew off her finger, Yi Qingtang immediately sat up and gently pushed the demon's head aside. Little heavenly demon looked very unhappy at being pushed aside. Its demonic eyes filled with crystal clear tears as it stroked its own belly sadly while hugging its tail. It gazed piteously at Yi Qingtang. Yi Qingtang's heart was instantly engulfed by a strong sense of guilt. You are a heavenly demon. Why are you acting all cute and pitiful? Aren't you giving heavenly demons a bad name? Despite all those thoughts, Yi Qingtang still obediently retrieved a large amount of food from her space ring and piled it in front of the little heavenly demon. In a flash, little heavenly demon's eyes sparkled as it flung its own tail aside and dived headfirst into the sea of food. Its two short paws were hard at work, shoving the food straight into its wide-open mouth. Looking at that behavior, Yi Qingtang really felt like it had a bottomless pit for an appetite. It must be pointed out that the amount of food it was consuming was several times more than its own size. As little heavenly demon was happily eating away, Yi Qingtang was already surveying their surroundings. After all, she couldn't hang around this area forever. She would have to move on if she wanted to leave. Yi Qingtang tidied up and was prepared to continue her journey. Little heavenly demon noticed Yi Qingtang had climbed onto little White Tiger's back again, ready to leave. With another sweep of its paw, it shoved the rest of the food into its mouth. Cheeks bulging with food, it trotted on its two short legs over to little White Tiger's side. Without further ado, the little heavenly demon then clambered onto little White Tiger and settled down in Yi Qingtang's arms. Chapter 1734, Attack from Both Sides, 2, Woo, little heavenly demon sat down firmly with its cheeks bulging so much that it had to hold them with its paws. A tuft of little White Tiger's fur was still lodged in one of its claws. Little White Tiger, damn, if not for the fact that it couldn't defeat this heavenly demon, little White Tiger would already have tossed that little punk onto the floor and stomped on it for tugging on its fur. Yi Qingtang felt both amused and exasperated at little heavenly demon's clingy behavior. She held it tightly before patting little White Tiger, indicating that it should start moving. Grumbling somewhat, little White Tiger finally started to move after a bit of reluctance. Their journey was relatively calm and peaceful. Yi Qingtang observed several mid-sized monsters eyeing them from the sides. They all paused before scurrying away. Those monsters must have detected little heavenly demon's demon aura. Somehow, the greedy little heavenly demon had become their protector. But its appetite was astounding. Mountains of food had already been stuffed into its belly, but it remained unsatiated. It kept staring piteously at Yi Qingtang, which induced her to subconsciously reach into her space ring. By now, her supply of food was nearing the bottom. Just as Yi Qingtang was still quietly marveling at little heavenly demon's appetite, there was a tremor in the valley in front of them. Countless shards of ice scattered down from the mountain tops, and some of them landed on little heavenly demon's nose. Curious, it licked at them but then frowned at the chilly feeling. Roar! An earth-shattering beastly howl suddenly echoed through the valley. Yi Qingtang's brows furrowed. She could clearly feel a powerful aura emanating from behind those ice mountains. It was a mighty force, and the nearer they were, the more clearly she could feel it. Yi Qingtang was about to get little white tiger to make a detour, but just as they switched directions, a huge shadow stood up from behind that ice mountain. It was a giant humanoid beast with an ugly face and rotting boils covering its entire body. Even from a distance, they could smell the evil stench it exuded. Troll! Yi Qingtang's eyes widened when she saw this monster, which was even bigger than an ice mountain. Sometime in the past, Yi Qingtang had seen this type of monster once. It was during her earlier visit to the two-star constellation. But she had just seen a picture of it then, and had never witnessed one in real life. Even within the two-star constellation, trolls were monsters which only existed in legends. They had been extinct for thousands of years. However, why was there a troll here now? Yi Qingtang was very puzzled, but it was not the time now to ponder such mysteries. The troll was one of the strongest and mightiest monsters. Even the hardest rock would crumble like soft tofu in its hands. In addition, trolls were naturally violent and combative. At this point, the troll was standing at full height. It took one leisurely step and completely flattened the ice mountain right in front of Yi Qingtang's very eyes. Countless ice shards scattered in all directions and accumulated snow gushed out like ocean waves. Little White Tiger quickly leaped into the air and dodged the impending avalanche. But in doing so, it caught the eye of the troll. Roar! The troll's green eyes suddenly discovered Yi Qingtang and the others. Roaring with agitation, it raised a giant axe covered in spikes and charged straight at them. Chapter 1735, Attack from Both Sides. 3. Cold sweat burst out on Little White Tiger as it jumped over to one side to hide. The axe couldn't reach them, but it split the thick, 10-meter thick ice under their feet clean into two. A giant crack cut through the boundless ice beneath their feet, splitting apart the ground as if the axe was slicing into warmed butter. Piercingly cold water burst through the cracks, then instantly froze into pillars, crossing the gaps in the ice. With a loud roar, the troll stepped forward. The moment the ground moved, another loud crack sounded from the ice. Even though the beast was extremely powerful, it moved slowly, its large frame making his movements dull and clumsy. But even if that was the case, Yi Qingtang didn't dare relax for a single minute. With the troll's strength, Little White Tiger and her would become mincemeat if they even took a single blow from it. Damn you, little heavenly demon! You ate so much earlier. It's time for you to do something now. The Little White Tiger shook as he saw the strong waves rippling from the troll as it approached. The little heavenly demon's face was blank in Yi Qingtang's arms. Yi Qingtang's head hurt as she looked at the little heavenly demon. She had absolutely no control over when it was going to lift a hand to help. At the same time, Little White Tiger was still sweating buckets trying to hide from the troll when a bright light started shining from the cracks the troll had made in the ice. That's bad, there's something. Little White Tiger's gaze turned downwards to the cracks below him. He could vaguely make out something shining like a star floating underneath. In the next second, the water which had frozen into ice broke open as a creature resembling a cross between a fish and a bird burst forth towards the sky. Its entire body was icy blue, like an ice sculpture. The creature emitted an ear-piercing neigh that seemed to stab right through their eardrums, right into their souls. The moment Yi Qingtang heard the sound, it felt as though a strange force had pierced straight through her mind. She trembled in pain. Damn it, is this ever going to end? Little White Tiger stared at the flying monster as it plunged straight at them. Lord! A troll and a monster, with them in between. Both of them seemed to want their lives and both seemed like they could devour the sky and earth whole. Their situation was now 1,000 times more difficult. Either of them could end them easily. Yi Qingtang frowned as she fought against the pain the flying monster had inflicted on her. She surrounded herself with black flames as her eyes remained fixated on the monsters approaching her on the left and right. Even though the troll was slow, the monster was extremely fast. With Little White Tiger's speed, there was no way they were getting out of here. That meant they could only fight. The little heavenly demon in Yi Qingtang's arms remained expressionless as it stared dumbly at the troll and the monster approaching on both sides. But as it noticed the black flames on Yi Qingtang's body, its eyes widened. Yi Qingtang had already tensed up and was already prepared to fight a bloody battle to the end when she suddenly noticed the little heavenly demon reach out and grab the black flames from her body. Yi Qingtang was speechless. What was this little creature doing? Chapter 1736, A Bewitching Melody, 1. Before Yi Qingtang had time to think about this, the monster from the ice gave a piercing roar. It shattered through Yi Qingtang's mind and was so painful she broke out into cold sweat. At the same time, the mammoth troll raised its giant axe and lumbered towards Yi Qingtang and Little White Tiger. Meanwhile, the little heavenly demon was still staring in fascination at the black flames, but they weakened as Yi Qingtang was distracted. The little heavenly demon stared in shock as the flame it had painstakingly captured in its hands vanished. At this moment, the shadow of the axe fell on them. Those demonic eyes of it suddenly turned angry as the little heavenly demon raised its head and let out a roar through a mouth lined with sharp, pointed teeth. The roar seemed to have a great effect on the troll and it stepped back a few steps, his axe frozen in midair. As for the fish-like monster, it seemed to have been affected by an unknown force as well. It suddenly stopped in the middle of its attack even as its icy blue eyes continued swirling about, as though looking for something. Yi Qingtang could only stare in stunned silence as she saw the situation suddenly reverse in front of her eyes. Her life had just been hanging by a thread. By her side, Little White Tiger exhaled a sigh of relief. Damn, this little brat finally made a move. What's happening? Yi Qingtang's eyes were filled with uncertainty as her gaze swept over the two monsters. This is the heavenly demon's bewitching melody. Who knew this little brat was going to be useful in a pinch? Little White Tiger said. The bewitching melody was one of the heavenly demon's powers and had an extremely strong enchantment. Even Supreme Divine level monsters would become confused after hearing the bewitching melody and stop all they were doing. But this would only last a short while in Supreme Divine level monsters. But even though these monsters were extremely strong, they were nothing compared to Supreme Divine level monsters. Otherwise, with the little heavenly demon's young age, it would only be able to bewitch the Supreme Divine level monster for the time of one breath. In the time it took for Little White Tiger to explain this, the fish-like monster suddenly regained its wits and let out a huge roar, as though angry that it had been toyed with. This monster is stronger than the troll, which is why it recovered faster. All of Little White Tiger's hairs stood on their ends as it looked at the fish-like monster looming towards them in rage. Right at this moment, the little heavenly demon opened its mouth again and roared at the monsters again. The monster tearing towards them froze for a moment, before it collapsed onto the ground. Seeing this, Little White Tiger rushed away with Yi Qingtang and the little heavenly demon. The monster was not weak at all and would be regaining its consciousness soon. They were going to die if they continued staying here. Seizing the opportunity, Little White Tiger ran even faster as Yi Qingtang hugged the little heavenly demon tightly so it would not fall. At long last they finally escaped after Little White Tiger spent all his strength escaping from the previous predicament. On his back, Yi Qingtang breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Chapter 1737, A Bewitching Melody, too, but there was no time for her to let her guard down. A huge shadow passed in front of them. The troll had somehow managed to get in front of them. Damn it, this troll isn't stupid at all, it knows how to take a detour. They had finally escaped the fish-like monster only to be greeted by the troll again. The little white tiger's heart was pounding hard. Trolls have the ability to escape by burrowing into the ground where they move faster than most creatures. It has an exceptional sense of smell and already has its sights set on us. Even if we escape, it's only going to keep following us and bide its time. Yi Qingtang sighed as she looked at the troll in front of her. Once a troll had its sights set on its prey, it would never stop until it had killed it. No matter how far apart they were, it would continue hunting it down until it knew that its prey was no longer in existence. So what do we do? Little White Tiger asked. We can only fight. Yi Qingtang sighed again. She lowered her head to look at the little heavenly demon. Not knowing whether it could even understand her, she said, "Look at him and roar again." With that, Yi Qingtang mimicked shouting in the troll's direction. The little heavenly demon tilted its head and looked at Yi Qingtang, a look of confusion on its face. Having gotten its attention, Yi Qingtang took a fruit out of her space ring. Greedy little eyes immediately lit up as it reached out to grab the fruit. But Yi Qingtang didn't give the fruit to it. She pointed to the troll and then at the little heavenly monster again. The little heavenly demon blinked at her before turning its eyes on the troll. In the next second, the bewitching melody came out of its mouth again. The troll froze again, a dazed expression on its face. It was now or never. Yi Qingtang narrowed her eyes and stuffed the fruit into the little heavenly demon's hands. The both of them flew up into the sky rapidly as black flames trailed behind her. She unsheathed the sword from her waist. As the black flames engulfed it, it transformed into the black flame sword which was a few meters long. Yi Qingtang raised the black flame sword as black flames surrounded her, and she flew quickly towards the black troll. Moving quickly around the troll, the black flame sword sliced into it again and again. But the skin of the troll was extremely thick and all Yi Qingtang managed to do was leave black marks on the troll. She couldn't do any damage at all. After a few breaths, the effect of the bewitching melody on the troll finally wore off and the troll's eyes were clear and bright again. Looking at the black marks on its body, it let out an angry roar, raised its hands and grabbed at Yi Qingtang who was flying around it. Yi Qingtang quickly flew away and dodged as she pulled a bag of fruits out of her space ring and threw it to Little White Tiger. Little White Tiger didn't understand Yi Qingtang's intentions. It grabbed the bag of fruit with its mouth and took a few out with its paw, throwing them behind him. The little heavenly demon looked at the raining fruits, opened its mouth and let out the bewitching melody again. Once again, the troll that was about to grab Yi Qingtang froze. Seizing this opportunity, Yi Qingtang turned into a whirlwind of flames, the black flame sword in her hands turning into a sharp wheel, spinning arcs around with her. In a fluid motion, she sliced straight down the troll's arm. Chapter 1738, A Bewitching Melody, 3, a loud clang rang out. No matter how many times Yi Qingtang tried, she could not penetrate the troll's defense. Even so, Yi Qingtang was becoming increasingly calm. She had no idea whether little heavenly demon's bewitching melody had a limit to it. Yi Qingtang didn't dare to waste a single second. Her attention was suddenly focused on the troll's huge eyes. "Little White Tiger!" Yi Qingtang suddenly called out. Understanding immediately what was asked, Little White Tiger immediately took out another fruit and tossed it to Little Heavenly Demon. Carrying the fruit, Little Heavenly Demon continued to hum its bewitching melody. But this time, its voice was significantly softer. Yi Qingtang could instinctively tell that the Little Heavenly Demon was too young to be able to use its bewitching melody too many times. She immediately stepped off the troll's arm and flew to the top of its head. With her black flame sword in hand, she viciously stabbed the troll's wide-open right eye. The sword instantly pierced into the troll's eyeball. The intense pain caused the troll to snap out of its trance. It gave an ear-piercing howl as it raised its hand toward its own eye. This was her last chance. Watching as the troll raised its huge palm, Yi Qingtang drew out her sword and flipped over to stab the troll's other eye. Thick, viscous fluid spurted out of the wound. Yi Qingtang drove the entire sword right into the eyeball before leaping away. She managed to escape right before the troll's huge palm smacked down. Earth-shattering howls erupted continuously from the troll. The moment Yi Qingtang landed on the ground, she conjured a roaring black fire with her bare hands and directed a steady stream of dark flames straight towards the sword embedded in the troll's eyes. Being channeled through the sword, the flames spread throughout the troll's body from within. The troll's most challenging factor was its iron-cast skin. No weapon was able to penetrate it. But if the attack came from within, that tough skin was no protection at all. The troll emitted gut-wrenching shrieks the moment the black flames entered its body. Balls of dark fire spurted out of the troll's orifices. Black flames spurted out of its eyes, ears, mouth and nose. That immense body swayed side to side, and after a long time, the troll suddenly collapsed on the ground. There were no visible wounds on its body, but its eyeballs had already been burned away, leaving 2 huge empty sockets. The flames continued to rage within those sockets, looking very freaky and deranged. "You killed the troll." Little White Tiger flew down and stared at Yi Qingtang in amazement. Shoulders heaving from the adrenaline, Yi Qingtang panted as she stared at the dead troll. She was also astonished. She had killed a troll. It must be pointed out that any one of these things could single-handedly destroy not just a country but a whole continent. Yi Qingtang suddenly turned to look somewhere behind Little White Tiger. Having finished eating a whole bag of fruit, Little Heavenly Demon was obediently sitting on Little White Tiger's back. It gazed at Yi Qingtang with a tilted head. Yi Qingtang's expression softened. If not for Little Heavenly Demon, she and Little White Tiger would have been no match for the troll. "Thanks, little fellow." Yi Qingtang reached out and stroked Little Heavenly Demon's head. Little Heavenly Demon blinked as it continued to stare at Yi Qingtang's space ring, which it knew was filled with food. This greedy little creature. Chapter 1739, Looking for Food. 1. The troll was dead, but that evil stench still permeated the air. In fact, the stench became even more intense after the troll was burned by the black fire. Yi Qingtang didn't dare to linger around. Although she had killed the troll, there were still many other monsters in this mystic realm. That jade-like creature they saw earlier was several times stronger than this troll. Now that Little Heavenly Demon's bewitching melody was losing its effectiveness, they would be in danger again if they encountered other monsters. Bringing along this Little Heavenly Demon was like having a protection amulet. However, this little fellow was way too greedy. Perhaps it had expended a lot of energy when using the bewitching melody, but the Little Heavenly Demon's desire for food was even more intense now. Even though Yi Qingtang had stored a lot of food in her space ring, her supply would soon run out given the Little Heavenly Demon's endless gobbling. But Yi Qingtang couldn't bear it whenever she saw Little Heavenly Demon's piteous face. She would rather go hungry and feed the young fellow instead. It was lucky that Little White Tiger did not need to eat. But it felt rather exasperated at Little Heavenly Demon's greediness. How in the world did the Heavenly Demons produce such a glutton? As her food supply started to run out, Yi Qingtang stopped eating for several days. She would eat some snow whenever she felt hungry, while the rest of the food was all given to Little Heavenly Demon. "I say, do you really need to give everything to it? You haven't fully recovered yet." Little White Tiger shook out its fur and grumbled as it watched Little Heavenly Demon swallow Yi Qingtang's last pack of field rations. Thereafter, Little Heavenly Demon continued to look unsatisfied and hustled over to Yi Qingtang, wagging its tail. Yi Qingtang chuckled in exasperation. She had no choice. Her heart melted every time she looked at Little Heavenly Demon's pitiful, begging face. She couldn't resist leaving all the food for it. But to be honest, Yi Qingtang was truly starving. Her body was still recovering, but she had only consumed snow the past few days. Given her abilities, she could have gone a month without eating for drinking outside this realm. But the amount of energy she had to expend in the mystic realm was tremendous. She would suffer from hunger pangs after just 2 to 3 days without food. Luckily they had little heavenly demon for protection during this journey. It meant that they encountered much fewer monsters. Otherwise, they would have had a much harder time surviving. Little heavenly demon continued to gaze at Yi Qingtang with sparkling, teary eyes. That last pack of field rations was just a small snack for it. It was still extremely hungry. I really have no more food. Yi Qingtang sighed softly. Little heavenly demon tilted its head in confusion. Having waited for a long while without getting any food, it hugged its own tail in a forlorn manner and gazed pathetically at Yi Qingtang. The word, hunger, was written all over its tiny face. Yi Qingtang's head started to ache. This little fellow's appetite was just too big. The food inside her space ring could have lasted her at least a year. But it had now been completely devoured by little heavenly demon in just a few days. What should she do? Without food, little heavenly demon was instantly despondent and listless. It sprawled lethargically in Yi Qingtang's arms all day, its wide eyes quietly surveying the surroundings. The moment it spied some icicles on those ice trees, it gave an involuntary gulp before dashing over to chew on it, causing its little milk teeth to ache from the cold. Ah, oh! Holding its frozen cheeks, little heavenly demon gazed miserably at Yi Qingtang. Chapter 1740, Looking for Food, 2. As she looked at the little fellow's pitiful state and felt the rumbling of her own empty stomach, Yi Qingtang suddenly had an idea. She had little white tiger shrink back down in size, then carried the two creatures into a patch of ice forest in front of them. Silence enveloped the ice forest. Yi Qingtang searched for a long while before finally spotting a slumbering ice beast beside a frozen lake. That ice beast was over a dozen meters tall and snored so loudly that the ground nearby trembled. Yi Qingtang brought little heavenly demon and little white tiger over to the side. She continued to observe that ice beast. Don't tell me, you want to, little white tiger suddenly realized what Yi Qingtang was planning to do. It widened its eyes in shock. Yi Qingtang must be mad. What else can we do? Just continue to starve. Yi Qingtang was left with no choice either. When did you become such a daredevil? Little white tiger sighed and shook its head. Previously, they tried their best to avoid the monsters in this mystic realm, but now, Yi Qingtang was planning to eat one of them? The desire for food was truly irrepressible. Yi Qingtang pointed at the ice beast. For eating. Having spent some time together, little heavenly demon could more or less understand what Yi Qingtang tried to say to it. Although it still didn't understand most of her words, it understood certain key phrases. Especially the word eat. This word. The moment little heavenly demon heard the word eat, it immediately perked up and stared at the ice beast with sparkling eyes. Baring its sharp little teeth and making guttural noises, it immediately wanted to charge toward that ice beast. But it was dragged back by the tail by Yi Qingtang. Little heavenly demon looked very aggrieved at being dragged back. Wasn't it for eating? Drool had already accumulated at the corners of its lips. You must bewitch it before you can eat it. Yi Qingtang stared at the little heavenly demon in amusement. That ice beast was no weakling. It was at least a paragon level. In normal circumstances, Yi Qingtang would have immediately turned and left if she saw such a monster, but now. Both she and little heavenly demon were going crazy with hunger. If they didn't find something to eat soon, she was worried that the little heavenly demon might swallow little white tiger and her whole. In fact, after enduring several days of hunger, little heavenly demon had already been observing little white tiger with glittery eyes. Little heavenly demon stared at Yi Qingtang in confusion. It finally stopped struggling after some time. Yi Qingtang saw that it seemed to understand. She had little white tiger wait by the side, while she brought the little heavenly demon over to hunt. In case the little heavenly demon didn't understand her plan, little white tiger could immediately scurry over and carry them away. After making all the proper preparations, Yi Qingtang carried the little heavenly demon over to that sleeping ice beast. If not for the little heavenly demon beside her, Yi Qingtang would never dream of doing something so insane just for a bit of food. A fourth heaven of the heavenly venerate realm human bold enough to provoke a paragon-level monster. Wasn't she just seeking death? Slowly but surely, Yi Qingtang approached the slumbering monster. Then she placed little heavenly demon under a tree while she went nearer by herself. Little heavenly demon didn't know what Yi Qingtang wanted to do. All it could think about was how to swallow that huge creature in front of it. The ice beast seemed to detect Yi Qingtang's presence. It suddenly opened those big eyes which immediately locked upon her. With an almighty roar, the ice beast scrambled to its feet and charged toward Yi Qingtang. Chapter 1741, Looking for Food, 3, Bewitch It. Yi Qingtang ordered. Little heavenly demon was momentarily startled, before opening its mouth and emitting its bewitching melody. The moment that bewitching melody played out, the gigantic ice beast seemed to have been stopped by some hidden force. It stood there unmoving, its huge eyes filled with enchantment. Taking advantage of this moment, Yi Qingtang raised her sword and focused all her energy onto her shimmering blade. The sword energy shot out in an arc right toward the soft belly region of that ice beast. Fresh blood gushed out as a huge wound appeared across that ice beast's belly. The intense pain caused the ice beast to snap out of its trance. Its head snapped towards Yi Qingtang with bloodshot eyes and howled viciously before charging toward her. Little heavenly demon instinctively emitted its bewitching melody again when it saw the ice beast attacking Yi Qingtang. The raging ice beast once again fell into a trance. Yi Qingtang immediately hacked away at the ice beast's belly, finally splitting it open. Having sustained such grave injuries, the ice beast could no longer rally and collapsed in a pool of blood. Up till its very last breath, it was probably still confused as to how it died at the hands of a weak little human. Heaving a sigh of relief, Yi Qingtang felt her shoulders sag the moment the ice beast collapsed. But before she could move a single step, little heavenly demon had already pounced happily toward the ice beast's dead body. It grabbed onto the beast's large paws and started chewing on it. Pfft! Little heavenly demon immediately spat out the first mouthful, then wiped its own mouth in disgust. Tuh! This tasted so gross. Yi Qingtang couldn't help chuckling as she watched the disdainful little heavenly demon who looked like it had eaten something poisonous. Silly little thing. How hungry are you to just bite into it like that? The ice beast had very thick skin and tough flesh. Little heavenly demon's tiny milk teeth probably just managed to scrape off a layer of dead skin. That must have tasted terrible. Little heavenly demon looked extremely upset, as if it had been deceived. This thing was totally inedible. Amused, Yi Qingtang set little heavenly demon aside. Making use of her sword, she carved off the ice beast's thick skin and then sliced off a piece of the soft flesh underneath. She then ignited a black flame on her palm and started roasting the flesh. Little heavenly demon's expression was full of disdain. But as the smell of roasting meat slowly reached its little nose, its eyes suddenly brightened. After seeing that the meat was nearly done, Yi Qingtang tried a bite. It was very delicious with none of the pungent taste of blood. This was even more delicious than she expected. Could it be that her black flame added flavor to the food? Yi Qingtang didn't dwell too much on it. She held out a piping hot piece of meat to little heavenly demon's mouth. After being deceived before, little heavenly demon was still hesitant. That earlier disgusting taste still lingered in its mouth. But the delicious smell of roasted meat tempted it, making it inch closer. It had already been several days and little heavenly demon was already starving after gobbling up all of the rations. In the end, it just shut its eyes and bravely took a bite. Little heavenly demon immediately opened its eyes wide, which sparkled like starlight. Holding its tiny paws to its cheeks filled with meat, it looked like it was about to float up to heaven in bliss. Before meeting Yi Qingtang, little heavenly demon had not much to eat at all. It was already very satisfied by the dried rations she had provided earlier. But this freshly roasted meat was warm and fragrant. It instantly opened its eyes to a whole new world. Delicious. Chapter 1742, Looking for Food. 4. Little heavenly demon finished up the piece of meat in 2 bites. After that, it ran over to the dead ice beast. Copying Yi Qingtang's earlier actions, it peeled off the skin of the beast's entire arm. It then looked expectantly at Yi Qingtang. Ah-ooh. Ah-oh. It patted the exposed flesh excitedly. Who? It wanted Yi Qingtang to roast this entire arm. Amused, Yi Qingtang picked little heavenly demon up before ejecting a stream of black flame toward the ice beast's body, roasting it through and through. Before long, the strong smell of roasted meat permeated the air. The back of Yi Qingtang's hand was dripping with drool from little heavenly demon. Before Yi Qingtang let go of it, little heavenly demon threw itself onto the freshly roasted ice beast and started feasting away with no shame. Meanwhile, little white tiger strode over and was flabbergasted by the sight of little heavenly demon completely immersed in the joy of eating. Its own parents would probably crush it to death if they saw this. It was the first time that little white tiger had seen such an unworldly heavenly demon. Yi Qingtang chuckled before carving out a piece of meat for herself. Little white tiger was not hungry, but enticed by little heavenly demon's lusty enjoyment, it also tried a few bites. Damn, it really tasted pretty good. I realize now that you have the makings of a great chef. Little white tiger made sure to praise Yi Qingtang. The corners of Yi Qingtang's lips twitched slightly. That ice beast was over a dozen meters tall, and if it was only Yi Qingtang, she would take over a year to finish the entire thing. But the pint-sized little heavenly demon managed to gnaw the ice beast down to the bone. It didn't waste even the tiniest scrap of flesh. Once again, little white tiger was bewildered by its voracious appetite. It truly was a bottomless pit. Little heavenly demon had its eyes opened to a whole new world of gastronomy. It suddenly discovered that those disgusting monsters which it used to consume could turn into delicious food by Yi Qingtang's black flame, and gazed at Yi Qingtang in newfound adoration. Having known the taste of delicious food, little heavenly demon's desire for such delicacies intensified. So much so that, when night fell and Yi Qingtang lit a bonfire, little heavenly demon tried to drag little white tiger by the tail over to the fire. It looked like it was planning to roast little white tiger to eat. Little white tiger was incensed. Was this glutton really going to eat it? On the other hand, Yi Qingtang was thoroughly amused. The arrival of little heavenly demon had brought her a sliver of joy even in this terrifying mystic realm. But to guard against little heavenly demon gobbling little white tiger up, Yi Qingtang would spend some time looking for food as they hurried along their journey. If they encountered extremely powerful monsters, they would take a detour to avoid it, or else make use of little heavenly demon's bewitching melody to escape. If they met some less powerful monsters, they would try their luck to kill it and roast its meat for food. They ate so much that little heavenly demon's belly started to protrude. Little heavenly demon's greatest joy each day was to find traces of monsters in the snowy landscape. Having just eaten its fill, little heavenly demon sprawled lazily in Yi Qingtang's arms, snoring softly. They had been journeying for a long time, and they were now someplace where all was completely quiet. Nevertheless, Yi Qingtang suddenly heard the sound of trickling water nearby. How can there be the sound of trickling water? Yi Qingtang couldn't help feeling suspicious. It must be pointed out that all liquids would have instantly froze in the frozen ice fields. She had yet to see any signs of a water source since arriving here. Chapter 1743, a stunningly gorgeous woman, 1, Yi Qingtang and Little White Tiger walked over in the direction of the water sounds. After traveling several meters, they discovered one long, gigantic crack on the icy surface. It looked completely natural and the flowing water glimmered, showing no signs of frost at all. How is it possible for there to be a river here? Yi Qingtang gave a slight frown. Before she could ponder this puzzle further, a clear melody drifted into her ears. Yi Qingtang turned toward the sound and saw a slender figure sitting on the opposite bank of the river. The woman was dressed in pale blue and had an exquisite figure. Seated with her back facing the water, her hair was jet black and the ends of it trailed in the water. There were plenty of beautiful women in this world and Yi Qingtang had seen more than her fair share. But none were as exceptional as the back profile of this lady. Some women were pretty only because they were well-groomed. Some women were beautiful because they had great bone structure. That lattice back profile alone was utterly gorgeous. Just one glance left an indelible impression. A gentle, harmonious tune drifted over from that lady. It sounded elegant and refined, but also cheerful and upbeat. Every single note was full of unbridled joy. Just that voice alone was enough to make one forget about being in such a dangerous place. One could not help but smile at that melodious voice. Yi Qingtang was astonished but didn't step forward. Too many bizarre things had happened in this mystic realm. How could she forget Sang Feiyu, who became a tormented plaything for some ice vines? Neither did she forget the resentful Qin Mo. Yi Qingtang just stood there quietly watching the lattice back profile and listening to her wondrous singing. The sounds of trickling water accompanied that song, echoing across the endless ice fields. Suddenly, the song came to a pause, and the lady by the lake slowly turned her head. Just her side profile was enough to leave Yi Qingtang completely dumbstruck. Even a female like Yi Qingtang couldn't help being astounded by that face. It was just a side view but already gorgeous beyond belief. The corner of the woman's eye tilted pleasantly as if she was smiling. That fair, jade-like hand brushed gently across the surface of the river. The slight upward curl of those lips looked like it harbored all the joy in the world. Yi Qingtang's heart quivered. She was no monster. She subconsciously moved toward that woman, hoping to ask about this place. But before Yi Qingtang could get near to the river, the gorgeous lady suddenly disappeared without a trace. It was like she had never existed. Did you see that just now? Yi Qingtang turned to ask Little White Tiger. Little White Tiger nodded. Yi Qingtang was full of suspicion. How did that woman disappear right in front of her? Once again, Yi Qingtang surveyed her surroundings. Apart from an ice mountain range nearby, there were no other geographic features. It was almost as if she had seen an illusion. It was like it never existed. Could it be there were illusions in this mystic realm? But that voice sounded very real. Nevertheless, Yi Qingtang decided not to pursue it. There were too many strange things in this mystic realm. She instinctively felt that there were some things which one should not be overly curious about. Just as Yi Qingtang was about to carry Little Heavenly Demon and Little White Tiger across the river and continue their journey, that singing voice once again drifted over from the nearby ice mountain range. Chapter 1744, A Stunningly Gorgeous Woman, 2. With a slight frown marring her features, Yi Qingtang tried searching for the singing voice with the Little White Tiger and Little Heavenly Demon. But once Yi Qingtang was at the bottom of the iceberg, the joyful tune suddenly morphed into something twisted and dark. All the joy was instantly replaced with sorrow and darkness. The song was full of evil and made them feel as though they were breaking. They could hear notes of sadness intertwined with the melody. Listening to the song, Yi Qingtang's mind buzzed and trembled, as though the sorrow from the song had been infused into her heart, twisting her soul bit by bit. Black clouds covered the once cloudless sky as the song went on and the gentle blowing of the wind gradually became grating. The temperature around them seemed to keep dropping as well. It had already been a bone-chilling cold and at this point, seemed to have reached the extremities of what was possible. Yi Qingtang felt as though her body warmth had been completely robbed by the wind. Even little white tiger, which hadn't been feeling cold at all, was shivering. Damn it, is this woman a snow demon? Little white tiger couldn't help but exclaim as it looked at the snow which was suddenly filling the sky. Yi Qingtang frowned slightly but knew clearly in her heart that this woman was no ordinary snow demon. As the song got darker and darker, their surroundings were gradually buried in the snowstorm. The glacier was quickly blanketed in snow. Little white tiger quickly transformed into a full-grown tiger, scooped Yi Qingtang and little heavenly demon up into his mouth and took to the skies. They would be swallowed by the snowstorm if they waited here any longer. Their sight was extremely hampered by the snowstorm and little white tiger could only try to keep his composure in the mighty storm. Even within the snowstorm, they seemed to hear the woman laughing evilly. The snowstorm went on for a long time and the woman's voice eventually faded. Until the snowstorm subsided, their surroundings would continue to be covered in a thick layer of snow. Now the river had vanished, and the iceberg had been swallowed as well. All that was left were snowy mountains crossing over each other. The surroundings were eerily quiet. There were no sounds of the wind or the woman singing at all, it was as though none of that had happened. The snow was pure white, not a single flaw on it. We should think of ways to leave this place as soon as possible. I feel like we'll end up like those powerful men of the past from the second domain if we remain in this mystic realm, Little White Tiger said. Yi Qingtang nodded and suppressed her doubts as they rushed on. Looking at the mountains getting smaller in the distance, Yi Qingtang subconsciously thought about the singing voice of that woman, as though she was still entranced. After walking for a long time, the temperature around them started rising. Yi Qingtang had a feeling that they were getting out of this place, as the ice mountains around them lessened and valleys and hills appeared once again. The bone-piercing cold slowly faded as well. Yi Qingtang walked in the direction of the rising temperature and before long, a valley appeared in front of their eyes. If she was right, they would be able to leave this place after passing through this valley. Chapter 1745, The Strange Mountain Valley, 1. Since she had no idea what the place in front would have in store for them, Yi Qingtang decided to bring Little Heavenly Demon and Little White Tiger for a hunt first. After Little Heavenly Demon had killed a few weaker monsters, Yi Qingtang offered a portion of their flesh to it after she cooked the rest with her black flame and stored them in her space ring. It was better to be prepared in case they needed it later. Their main concern was that Little Heavenly Demon was going to eat Little White Tiger if it got too desperately hungry. After they had prepared thoroughly, Yi Qingtang brought the two of them to the valley which was warming up. But the moment Yi Qingtang stepped into the valley, a thick demonic aura hit them and surrounded the entire valley. The valley had looked so bright from the outside, but now that they were inside it was slightly dark and blurry. Not only that, there was also a nauseating stench of evil to go with the demonic aura. At the entrance of the valley, Yi Qingtang felt as though she had entered another world. The temperature here wasn't cold but their surroundings were extremely strange. There were many plants growing on the mountains on both sides but their leaves were dark purple and green. Yi Qingtang kept her guard up. Even though it was a demonic aura as well, the aura from Little Heavenly Demon and this place felt vastly different. It was clear that Little Heavenly Demon was being affected by the demonic aura as well. Previously it had been very lively, but was now extremely drowsy and it lay in Yi Qingtang's arms, fast asleep. Yi Qingtang tried waking it up but Little Heavenly Demon had no reaction at all and remained in a stupor. This place is a little odd. Little White Tiger scrunched its nose up. Its sense of smell had always been sensitive and the demonic aura and stench of evil in this valley was torturous to him. Yi Qingtang sensed something off about the valley as well, but as she took a look around she realized that apart from the sole road in the valley, there were no other roads to be seen. The mountains walled them off from any other paths. As for the sky above, it was covered in dark clouds as thunder rumbled ominously. They could see lightning flash past from time to time. Little stones rained from above as lightning struck the boulders. It would be even more dangerous for them to ignore this route and cross the mountains from above. We can only try. Yi Qingtang took a deep breath. She felt extremely pessimistic about this place but could not act on her suspicions if she wanted to leave this place as quickly as possible. They were left with no choice. Yi Qingtang was extra cautious as little heavenly demon was still sleeping. Before they had even traveled far into the valley, Yi Qingtang noticed big puddles of dark purple fluid on the ground under them. The dark purple fluid was as thick as glue and it stained the entire ground a strange color as it let out a revolting smell. What is this? Yi Qingtang walked over to the puddle and could vaguely make out some flesh and bones in it. It looks like the blood of some creature, Little White Tiger said as it sniffed the puddle. Chapter 1746, The Strange Mountain Valley. 2. Yi Qingtang's heart sank right to the bottom at Little White Tiger's words. There were not many creatures who possessed purple blood. And for the ones that did, every single one of them were terrifying beings. Yi Qingtang had no desire to encounter any one of them here. Furthermore, as she looked at the bits of flesh and broken bones, Yi Qingtang couldn't help thinking of another creature who also possessed purple blood and exuded a demon aura. There would be great trouble if those deductions were correct. Although she was unable to ascertain whether her suspicions were right, even if they were proven accurate, she had no choice but to push on. There was only one way out of the frozen ice fields. If she gave up now, she would never ever leave this mystic realm. Left with no other choice, Yi Qingtang kept her chin up and walked into the inner region of the mountain valley with Little Heavenly Demon and Little White Tiger. The further they ventured, the stronger the demonic aura became. Previously, the unconscious Little Heavenly Demon would still wag its tail now and then, but now, it was lying totally still in her arms. Her suspicions grew increasingly stronger. Yi Qingtang discovered many more large patches of purple blood, as if there had been an attempt to dye the entire mountain valley purple. But the strangest thing was that despite all that blood, Yi Qingtang had yet to see a single corpse. Apart from those bits of flesh and broken bones, she had not seen any other remains. Those corpses seemed to have been wiped out by something. Yi Qingtang suddenly heard sounds of fighting coming from afar. She immediately took out a bottle of elixir which could mask one's aura and ingested it. Carrying Little White Tiger, she headed toward the source of the noise. Not far off inside the valley, a bloody scene straight from hell appeared. Large patches of thick, fresh purple blood were splashed everywhere, so much so that the earth beneath Yi Qingtang's feet was damp and sticky. This time, Yi Qingtang finally saw the source of all that blood. A swarm of humanoid monsters with malevolent and twisted faces were engaged in a ferocious battle. Those monsters were mostly hunchbacked and their hind legs were bent backwards in the way of beasts. Their skin was dark brown in color and they had wide jaws filled with sharp teeth, as they roared viciously. Those are fiendish demons? Yi Qingtang stared at the battling monsters. A buzzing sound filled her head. Fiendish demons were a type of demon which existed in ancient times. Legend had it that every single fiendish demon possessed an emperor-level amount of power. Bloodthirsty and vicious, they loved nothing more than fighting and killing. They also had the habit of killing each other. Powerful fiendish demons could gain strength by swallowing their own kind. Yi Qingtang already suspected that those purple blood, bits of flesh and crushed bones belonged to fiendish demons. But she was not entirely certain as she had never seen a real fiendish demon before. There were no such creatures inside the first domain. It was only after entering the second domain in her previous life that Yi Qingtang happened to overhear someone talking about fiendish demons. Yi Qingtang never expected there to be so many fiendish demons inside the mystic realm. What kind of place was this? The group of fiendish demons had yet to discover Yi Qingtang's presence. There were two opposing sides engaged in a fierce battle with countless defeated demons being felled to the ground. Fresh purple blood spurted out in all directions and the evil stench that permeated the air was revolting. Chapter 1747, The Strange Mountain Valley, 3, Yi Qingtang hid in the shadows, observing the whole scene. Although fiendish demons had some physical similarities to humans, their skin and flesh were exceptionally hard and tough. Even the sharpest blades forged from top-grade metals would not be able to cause a single scratch. Legend had it that when a fighter who was emperor level and below encountered a fiendish demon, the only thing that he could do was run. There was no chance he could win a fight against a fiendish demon. But somehow, that tough skin appeared weak and vulnerable against their own kind, easily torn apart by those razor-sharp fangs and claws. Yi Qingtang stared with pensive eyes as a large fiendish demon slashed another demon right in half with just one swipe. Even the bones inside were chopped in half. The sight of it made her shiver. When she was in the second domain, Yi Qingtang had once seen a dagger made from the bones of a fiendish demon at an auction. That dagger cut through metal like it was soft mud, hard and indestructible. Today, she had truly seen it all. The large fiendish demon bit into its opponent's head viciously and tore it right off as it started to consume it with relish. Fresh blood and brain matter splattered everywhere. The large fiendish demon boldly ate its prize as it fixed the demons on the opposing side with a challenging glare. In response, the fiendish demons on the opposing side roared angrily. Thereafter, they actually picked up the corpses of their own comrades and started to eat them too. The behavior of these creatures were completely incomprehensible to humans. They were comrades just a second ago, but in the next moment, they had become just another source of sustenance. Sounds of flesh and bones being chewed drifted into Yi Qingtang's ears. She couldn't help breaking out in goosebumps all over. Taking advantage of the fact that the fiendish demons were still engrossed in their battle, Yi Qingtang quickly carried Little White Tiger and Little Heavenly Demon and scurried off. This type of battle was not something she could take part in. Even if she just stood by and watched, she would be dead meat if they discovered her. On top of that, her status as a human would only result in dire consequences for her. But the further she progressed, the more fiendish demons appeared. The entire valley was occupied by their battle. Countless bits of demon flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Large groups of fiendish demons gathered over piles of their own dead, gorging themselves relentlessly on the flesh. Some of the demons were not even dead yet. Gravely injured, they watched helplessly as their own comrades feasted on their bodies. Those gory scenes were disturbing, and constantly challenged Yi Qingtang's mental state. All she could do was to swallow a bottle of elixir to mask her own aura and suppress her presence to the lowest level possible. Otherwise, she would probably suffer a much worse fate than those dismembered demons if she were discovered. Yi Qingtang's every step inside the mountain valley was made very carefully. At long last, she finally managed to leave the fiendish demon battlefield behind. Heaving a sigh of relief, she suddenly saw a familiar figure standing beside a nearby waterfall. Covered in blood, Qiu Chen was squatting by the waterfall and using the water to clean himself. Qiu Chen. Yi Qingtang's heart gave a jolt. Qiu Chen was also one of the people who had entered the mystic realm with her. But they had lost track of each other after the attack by the Ice King. It seemed like an age ago. After witnessing the wretched fates of Sang Feiyu and the rest, Yi Qingtang didn't immediately rush forward, but hid at the side to quietly observe Qiu Chen's movements. Chapter 1748, Fiendish Demon, 1. Qiu Chen had not detected Yi Qingtang's presence yet. He just crouched by the waterfall, quietly washing himself. The moment he stood up, a petite figure walked out from a small forest by the side. Yi Qingtang turned to look and was stunned. The person who had just emerged from those trees was Qiu Ci. Qiu Ci's face was pale. She was dragging a large sack behind her, which was completely drenched in blood. One would wonder what was stored inside. Even though she was looking at two familiar faces now, Yi Qingtang did not let down her guard at all. Having journeyed through the mountain valley, she was well aware of how terrible this demon-filled area was. But both Qiu Chen and Qiu Ci were completely unharmed. Apart from their pale countenance, nothing seemed amiss. Brother Qiu Chen. Qiu Ci raised her head timidly to look at Qiu Chen. Qiu Chen shot her an impatient look. He suddenly reached out and smacked Qiu Ci to the ground. You fool! Go ahead and die here if you want to. But don't drag me down with you. Sprawled down on the ground, Qiu Ci looked very pathetic as she stayed where she was. Yi Qingtang couldn't help frowning at this familiar scene. She really didn't understand why Qiu Chen always treated Qiu Ci in this cruel manner. Weren't they family members? But this scene alleviated some of Yi Qingtang's wariness. She was still considering whether to ally herself with them, when Qiu Ci suddenly gave a wide grin as she chuckled. Ha ha ha, that laughter was very eerie. There were no signs of a young girl's shyness and spirit, but was instead filled with a creepy malevolence. Qiu Chen climbed to her feet and reached out to grab Qiu Chen's arm. She tilted her head and smiled even wider. Her lips had split all the way up to her ears. It was like someone had slashed her face in half along her lips. Qiu Chen, brother, don't leave me behind. Instead of a tidy row of human teeth between those lips, it was filled with the sharp, jagged fangs of a beast. A blood-red tongue drooped down from Qiu Ci's mouth, much longer than any normal human being's. Qiu Chen's originally impatient expression also faded away to give rise to a malicious smile. The corners of his lips split open the same way as Qiu Ci's, revealing a same set of razor-sharp teeth and long, blood-red tongue. That long tongue reached out and licked the still-wet blood off Qiu Ci's face. Yi Qingtang watched this entire scene in shock. She had been about to step out to reveal herself. But now, there was no way she was moving a single inch. Almost immediately, Yi Qingtang's eyes landed on the large, blood-soaked sack on the ground. The sack wriggled as if it contained something alive. Piteous whimpering could be heard from it. Qiu Chen appeared to be angered by that whimpering. He suddenly raised one hand and sharp claws grew out of his long, slender fingers. Then he stabbed the sack with those claws. A blood-curdling cry rang out. Qiu Chen grinned happily, before he twisted his claws and fresh blood pooled out of that sack. Those piteous whimpers were replaced by wretched wails. Chapter 1749, Fiendish Demon, 2, Rip. Qiu Chen's sharp claws ripped through the sack and pulled out the bloodied mess inside. At this point, Yi Qingtang finally saw clearly what was inside that sack. The sight nearly made her want to throw up. It was a person who had been completely skinned. The person's entire body was a mess of bright pink exposed flesh covered in fresh blood. Qiu Chen, brother. Qiu Chen, brother, that skinned person was being held in midair by Qiu Chen's sharp claws. Fresh blood dripped down onto Qiu Chen, even as bloodied tears streamed down the person's cheeks. Those eyes. That familiar voice. Yi Qingtang was taken aback. It was Qiu Ci. Looking at the skinned Qiu Ci and then at the grinning Qiu Ci, Yi Qingtang could deduce what had happened to Qiu Ci and Qiu Chen. Legend had it that fiendish demons loved to torture. They especially loved to torture humans, who were full of feelings and emotions. This was also why Yi Qingtang was so worried about being discovered. Qiu Ci and Qiu Chen had probably accidentally stumbled into this mountain valley and were discovered by the fiendish demons. The two humans had been captured and skinned, and their skins were now being worn by the demons. Yi Qingtang's stomach churned. Stop acting dead. I want to continue playing. The fiendish demon draped in Qiu Ci's skin whined. They can't die, they can never die, the demon wearing Qiu Chen's skin grinned an ear-splitting grin. He stared at the crying Qiu Ci, admiring her fearful and despairing expression as he slowly twisted his sharp claws deeper into her, grinding up her insides bit by bit. To a fiendish demon, a human's reaction to torture was the most wonderful thing in the world. So fearful, so easily breakable and powerless under their might. Just as the two fiendish demons were enjoying themselves, several black figures suddenly darted out of the trees. They were a group of malevolent-looking fiendish demons. Noticing the two demons clad in human skin, they immediately howled. Startled, the two fiendish demons emitted their own demonic cries. It was clear that the new group of fiendish demons were not from the same camp as the first two. The bunch of them immediately engaged in a fierce battle. The new group of fiendish demons were all extremely powerful and they outnumbered the first two. Within seconds, those two fiendish demons were slaughtered and the victors peeled off their human skins and kept them away. Thereafter, they immediately started feasting on the dead demon's flesh. After finishing their meal, they discovered the bloodied Xiao Ci by the waterfall. Skewering her with their sharp claws, they picked her up and left the place. In the end, all that was left by the waterfall was a pool of blood and the remains of those two fiendish demons. Once she made sure that the fiendish demons had left, Yi Qingtang slowly stood up after making sure that the aura exuded by those demons had also faded away. What she witnessed earlier turned her stomach inside out. She didn't know Qiu Ci well, but seeing a live human being played and tortured in this manner by the fiendish demons, the whole experience weighed so heavily on her that she found it hard to breathe. It was obvious that the new group of fiendish demons would not be kind to Qiu Ci. It would be a new round of torture for her. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.